Commissioners, good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the June 15th Oregon Tourism Commission meeting. To everyone who's joined us through the Travel Oregon Industry YouTube channel, good morning, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Our meeting materials, including the agenda and supplemental material, can be found on the Travel Oregon Industry website if you'd like to follow along. One feature we're utilizing for today's meeting is closed captioning. We feel that this is an important step in supporting both the statewide and Travel Oregon's diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Should you prefer, you may turn off the feature using a button on your Zoom bar as part of today's hybrid meeting. Commissioners, I'd like to acknowledge that in holding our live stream meeting today, we do meet all public meeting notice requirements as required by statute and Oregon state law. And as our meeting today is being convened virtually, I'd like to go around and we can do this with eye contact today, and to ask each commissioner to introduce themselves, maybe beginning to my left, your right.
Yes. Greg Willits, Five Pine Lodge in Sisters, Oregon, one of the prettiest towns in Oregon. And it's in full beauty right now. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Maria Ponzi, formerly president and owner of Ponzi Vineyards, a current owner of BW56, a vineyard management company in the beautiful Willamette Valley.
All right. Good morning, commissioners. Good to be together. Todd Davidson, the CEO of Travel Oregon.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nigel Francisco. I am the CEO of Ninkasi Brewing Company and excited to be here seeing everyone face to face.
Richard Boyles, Merite Hotel Management Group based in Springfield, Oregon. And I would certainly echo Nigel's comments. It's great to be meeting in person.
Kenji Sugahara, owner of ACAM Aerials in Salem. And I gotta say, I am so happy to see everybody in person, and especially to be staying in Portland too. Knowing what's happened, this is just fantastic, and staying in the Hyatt, it's a wonderful property. So thanks to everybody involved in that.
Thank you, Kenji. I'm Scott Youngblood. I'm the innkeeper at the Embassy Suites by Hilton at Washington Square, just on the outskirts of Portland. And unfortunately, Commissioners Shepard and DeNovo aren't with us physically today and won't be attending in person, but we wish them well and look forward to an opportunity to be with them again. Wow, it's been a long pandemic. It's exciting to be able to sit together, even a handful of us, even physically distanced, but to be able to have a meeting in person and to take just a moment to kind of revisit this journey that we've all been on for far too many months. And I don't think an occasion like this is complete without some reflection and an expression of gratitude. For me, it's gratitude to the Travel Oregon staff at every level in the organization, all the way up through and including the vice presidents and the leadership and the CEO. For our industry partners who have had to balance throughout this entire episode what it means to take care of employees, what it means to take care of customers, and what it means to try to plan for life on the other side of what we have now come to believe is the inevitable recovery from the pandemic. I'm grateful for many more things, but I would like to share an opportunity for anyone on the commission to reflect as well before we move on. You guys. All right. Well, then we'll move on. Oh.
I'll jump in. I guess I'll reflect on the fact that I believe the last time we all met together was when we were in Independence, Oregon, and in person. And we were talking about what we thought the impacts of COVID were going to be. And I think I asked, how is this going to impact our international travel and tourism? And never would I have thought that 15 months later we'd be sitting here in this room and the impact would be that severe. So again, I'd echo Scott's comments. Thank you to all the Travel Oregon employees. Thank you to Todd, for your continued leadership in this, because, you know, being a business owner and a leader in that environment, I know how challenging it's been for all of us to do what it takes to save our organizations and work to get through to the other side of this. So thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Nigel. Kenji.
Yes. So to echo what folks have said, thanks to the staff and all the people who have worked with Travel Oregon for all the efforts that you've put in. And as a commission, we all appreciate the work that you've done. And I want to just put it out there that the darkest is over. The light is in the end of the tunnel. There's only 2% to go. So we're going to be coming back, and we're going to be coming back big. So I'm looking forward to seeing everything that comes out of Travel Oregon, the DMOs, and putting Oregon back at the top of the heap where we belong.
Nicely put. Thank you for the optimism. Anyone else? All right. On Tuesday, June 1st, the commission meeting notice was posted to the commission meetings webpage and announced in the industry e-news. On Friday, June 4th, the meeting materials, including our agenda, the updated draft strategic plan for 21 through 2023, and budget, along with public comment submissions and a strategic plan progress report, and the public the public comment form and instructions, and a link to this live stream. All those things were posted. That was a lot. June 4th, busy day. Moving on. The comment that was submitted has been shared with commissioners and will be posted to the industry site and become part of the public record for today's meeting. That comment, which you've all now received, requested that the names of each Travel Oregon employee whose jobs were lost a year ago be read during this public meeting. And while I certainly appreciate the desire to thank and to honor each of these professionals for their contributions to Travel Oregon and its mission, I'm also hesitant to fulfill the request just as a matter of privacy. I worry that some might not feel comforted being called out in a public meeting, and I also worry that my lack of individual acknowledgement could be misinterpreted as indifference. We on the Tourism Commission, we share a deep reverence for the Travel Oregon team, past and present. The organization has grown over decades through the tireless and passionate commitment of professionals, including those whose jobs were lost last year. Personally, I'm also sensitive to the profound survivor's guilt that has burdened the hearts of many Travel Oregon team members who have continued working. In matters like these, there aren't victors, there aren't losers, there aren't even opponents. And to all the good people who no longer serve this remarkable organization each day, please know that you have our commitment to your legacy and to honoring your contributions. As Vice Chair, Commissioner Francisco has taken the lead in preparation of this year's CEO performance review. I'll defer to him as he shares more insight into that process during his upcoming report. And I might also note that this has been an incredibly difficult year for the industry, obviously our state and our elected leaders. And conducting this year's legislative session has been an unbelievable high wire act, and we appreciate the work being done in Salem on behalf of Oregonians everywhere. We on the commission have immense faith in the women and men who represent us and know that they appreciate the significant contributions of tourism, not only as an economic engine for Oregon, but as a responsible means of sharing what makes this place of ours magical for others. Our elected leaders, our allies, and our restaurant servers and our cooks, to our housekeeping teams, and to the leaders within our industry and agency. And we're grateful for the work that they do and what it means to empower the work that we do. I'd like to review the commission packet and to confirm that everyone has received and had an opportunity to review the commission packet, including the financials. Looking for some affirmation. Brilliant, thank you. And I'd also like to thank the commissioners, Francisco and Boyles, for reviewing the financials with me and Todd, with Jeff and Kathleen prior to the meeting. And Nigel, would you like to provide the commission with an update on the financial status?
Absolutely. So the most current fiscal year to date financials that we had were the materials that were in your guys' packet. We learned yesterday that the June deposit was almost 1.1 million, bringing Travel Oregon's budget to 108.8% of the adopted 2021 budget. So above where we thought would end up, where we thought it would end up. Overall, we're extremely pleased with the recovery, and seeing the team's diligence and tracking progress. We have no concerns about the financials at this time.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Nigel concerning his financial update? All right. Well, then I would like to move to the previous meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the May 11th meeting minutes? And for that matter, are there any questions or comments concerning those minutes? All right. Well, if not, then I will take a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. And second?
Second.
Thank you both. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposition? Perfect. The May 11th Commission meeting minutes are approved and will be posted to the Commission section of the Travel Oregon Industry website. Commissioners, every year we complete a review of the performance of our CEO. Vice Chair Francisco is leading that process, and I'd love for him to take an opportunity to provide kind of an update on the process, where we are and what to expect moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Chair Youngblood. So as commissioners, we undertake the review process of the CEO every year as part of our statutory duties. This review process takes into account an evaluation of performance by many different work groups across the state. For this process this year, it's led by myself in conjunction with the Travel Oregon HR manager, going over some of the components of what this looks like that you guys should be familiar with. One, we'll conduct a staff survey of a subset of staff. These survey results are then compiled and shared with the commissioners, which is part of the next step. These are masked so that to provide confidentiality from the people providing the results. The staff surveys are also at random, so random staff members are selected every year to participate in that survey process. The commissioner evaluation part of this, the commissioners are also received a survey. Then those results are then compiled, shared with all the commissioners, and then you will generally have a conversation with myself or the chair about those results. We normally split those duties up, and then any additional context that can be added, and we sort of update you with where we are in the process. An additional subset of stakeholders that could include RDMOs, DMOs, guides, outfitters, governmental agencies, non-governmental agencies. That survey is also provided to them as we coordinate our efforts across many other teams of people. Again, those results are compiled, and then that is included in our final report. The final piece of this is also a self-review that's conducted by Todd himself, and then we use that in the evaluation process. So after all results are compiled, we conduct an individual review process with a final write-up. And this year we're going to share that final write-up, share the results of all the surveys with all of the commissioners. And then that will complete the review process. And our goal is to have that review process complete by July 31st. It's a little bit later this year than customary. So that is a little bit about the review process. As far as the compensation, the commission also reviews compensation at this time for the CEO. Compensation is set at the direction of the commission, and more specifically, the commissioners evaluating performance. The commission does rely on third party to provide benchmark and compensation information that is collected from the travel tourism industry, and then also governmental and non-governmental agencies. And then they'll basically provide us with a range of acceptable compensation, and then it's our duty to select that what's appropriate. In accordance with the Secretary of State recommendations or the Secretary of State audit that was conducted, there was no findings in that audit, but we're now purchasing the survey results so we can retain those in our file in accordance again with the recommendation of the Secretary of State. So you guys will all be seeing those surveys very shortly, and then we'll start that process.
Thank you, Nigel. Commissioners, who has questions, comments, or thoughts about the CEO evaluation process? All right. Well, you're going to carry the football a lot today, Nigel. Next, we're going to talk about the nominating committee report and the election of the slate of officers for the upcoming year. At the February 23rd commission meeting, we asked Vice Chair Francisco and Commissioner Sugihara to serve as the nominating committee and return to this meeting with recommendations for next year's 2021 and 2022 officers. I'd like to ask Commissioners Francisco and Sugihara to provide that recommendation.
Great. First, I'll talk a little bit about the process, maybe a little bit, and bring up an old commissioner, Al Magia, who I think set a good precedent that I wanted to continue with, which was basically talking to commissioners individually to gauge their level of interest, rather than just assuming someone was or was not interested in either chair or vice chair level. So both Commissioner Sugihara and myself did contact every commissioner and gauge their level of interest about serving in these leadership roles. And I would encourage future commissions to continue to do that, as it was indicated to me that there are other individuals on our commission that want leadership positions. So Sugihara and I did make do have our recommendations at this time. And we're recommending that Chair Youngblood continue on in the chair role for one additional year, and Commissioner Boyles take the vice chair role.
Thank you. We should open it up to questions or comments or thoughts about this process for anyone.
I would just say I'm grateful to be considered for the position of vice chair. Thank you to the nominating committee.
Thank you very much, as am I. Yes, sir.
I would just like to ask, Scott, did you have a say in this?
Well, I did express an interest in continuing to serve in a leadership capacity.
And thank you, Scott.
Thank you. And of course, being on the slate for the recommendation, I would like to ask Vice Chair Francisco to manage the vote for next year's slate of officers.
Great. Before you continue, it looked like Maria had a question, so I want to make sure that was addressed.
Just for transparency reasons, can you explain, and I absolutely love having Chair Youngblood along for another year, but why the decision was made to extend the term?
Yeah, so, I guess our past precedent has been to have people serve that for 2 years. That's not a statutory requirement or duty. With the turmoil that we've had, that COVID has sort of thrust us into that direction. And with myself cycling off of that, we thought there would be a void in leadership during this sort of very critical time for the agency. So to have him continue to serve that for the congruency sake, for staff's sake, and then bring on Richard, and then the next nominating committee can decide what to do.
Great, makes sense. Thank you so much.
And maybe just to follow up on that, Maria, it's a great question, and thank you for asking. I was torn over the idea of whether or not to request an opportunity of all of you to continue in a leadership role, and it really was in the spirit of the difficulty that we've all experienced over the past year, that I wanted to make sure that we were able to continue with the momentum that we have sustained in spite of all of this. And in honor of Nigel's comment, kind of developing a proper succession so that people have an opportunity to spend time in the vice chair role and continue moving along. It's certainly not mandatory, but in my own experience and in my conversations with my predecessors, it was very, very helpful in kind of stepping along in that process.
So I guess back over to me then. I'll take motions for approval of this slate.
I'll motion to approve.
I'll second.
First and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. So the motion approves Scott Youngblood to serve as chair for an additional year and make Richard Boyles vice chair through June of 2022. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Nigel, and to all of you. The commission, the industry, the legislature, the governor, and the public at large have had extensive opportunities to review and discuss the proposed 21-23 strategic plan and budget. I commend the members of the commission, all of you, for your time and effort in reviewing the plan and subsequent revisions. 4 comments were submitted and have been provided to the commission, posted to the industry side, and staff have considered for updates to the plan. And I commend the staff team for their thorough and inclusive process in developing a rebuild plan and budget for the commission's consideration and for their responsiveness to the comments that were received. Thank you all. Commissioners, Todd has kept us apprised of the budget situation from the time our pandemic began. And while the impacts across the state have been felt by all, we are hopeful of the recovery to come given this budget modification request. I'd like to ask Todd at this time to walk us through the changes to the plan and budget resulting from the input received since the public hearing on May 11th.
All right. Thank you, Chair Youngblood. And Commissioners, I am going to do exactly that. I'm going to walk you through changes that were made to the plan. At the May meeting, when we held the public hearing on the rebuild plan, I walked you through all the elements of the plan, the objectives, the imperatives, the key performance indicators, and specific actions that were going to be done against each of the specific objectives and imperatives. I will not be doing that this morning. You were all provided the draft plan prior to the May meeting for an opportunity to review and submit any of your comments. We had the public hearing, as Chair Youngblood noted. We did receive some comment in writing, both before and after that meeting. I'd like to go through changes and how those comments were addressed, and then spend more time talking about the budget and the revenue forecast that we have subsequently received since the May meeting, and the deposit that we also received that Vice Chair Francisco mentioned earlier in our meeting today. So with that, I'd like to begin with changes that have been made to the plan. We did receive 4 comments, and 2 of those comments we believe directly impacted some changes for the rebuild plan. 2 of the comments offered some really thoughtful commentary on the ways Travel Oregon could contemplate tourism being different in the future and how we as an agency could respond to that. We believe they're helpful to informing the transformational plan that we're going to be building over the next several months. So we have taken those plans under advisement. We've also made sure that we've shared them with the contractor, Destination Think, that we are working with on that transformational plan, so that those comments can actually be given additional consideration as part of that plan. We thought that was the appropriate move there. So with that, the first change that was made to the rebuild plan was adding the tribal acknowledgement. We think it's important. We think it's a central part of what we are doing as an agency to make sure that we're leading all of our planning work and all of our programs through a racial equity lens. And one of the ways that we've been doing that is getting very intentional about acknowledging that there was a time that Oregon wasn't Oregon, right? And it's the indigenous home of many tribes and bands. And we want to make sure that that is called out front and center as part of the plan from the very beginning. So that has been inserted into the plan since we met in May. Moving ahead and looking at other subsequent changes, there was one change that was made to the who we are and what we do. And specifically, it was a modification that was made to the equity statement. It was pointed out to us that within the equity statement, a previous version had referenced, folks receiving the same resources and, in order to help attain the same potential outcome. And in reality, when you think about equity versus equality, equity is the resource you need may not be the same as the person next to you, in terms of what they need. And so we have omitted the words the same for that reason, because it's really about making sure that individuals are receiving the resources they need to then attain that similar outcome. But the resources that they need may be different. So that change was made to the equity statement. Moving on through the plan, there were no changes to this section specifically, but I wanted to touch on this because I think it's important that we ground ourselves again in the difference between the rebuild and the transformational plan. It's a different approach for us. It's a very intentional approach for us for much of the same reason that the commission was just discussing the extension of Chair Youngblood's term as chair of the commission. What we've been through, and it's a tired term, I know, is unprecedented. And it calls for rather a different approach to your strategic planning process. So we have spent the last several months looking at how do we rebuild the industry? How do you bring restoration to this? And how do you lay the foundation for what really needs to be a transformation of the agency and the industry and its role in Oregon's economy? So I wanted to make sure that we were clear on what the purpose is of this plan. The rebuild plan is written as a 2-year plan and budget, as is required in our statutes. It's to make sure that we're leading and supporting the rebuilding of the industry and the economic recovery, and that we're balancing those priorities of residents and visitors alike. That's a little different for us. And we think it's important that it be called out that as a destination management organization, that the benefits, the interests, the perspectives of residents are as valuable and valued as are the sentiments and the experiences of the visitors that are traveling to Oregon from around the world and how their experiences occur. So we believe that this plan is designed specifically to lay the foundation for the transformational plan as we go forward. So where we're going is in transforming the work of what we do and the role the industry plays in Oregon's economy. So we're acknowledging right up front, although this plan is being adopted as a 2-year plan and budget, and we believe that that's appropriate, given the fact that it is serving as a foundation for the transformational work, we do acknowledge that we're moving immediately into a transformational planning process, and that this plan will be revised in roughly 6 months, probably early 22, and we'll be bringing forward a budget modification at that time that reflects a new program of work, a transformational plan that will actually be adopted as a 4-year plan and carry Travel Oregon's work and the industry's work forward through 2025. The bottom line for why is because the world has changed. You know, we talk a lot about the fluidity. We talk a lot about the uncertainty. It's still present in our work to, well, you'll be hearing from Petra and Jeff Locker a little bit later this morning about trying to anticipate how international visitation will return to the US and specifically to Oregon, and what are the levers that are going to need to be pulled to help make that happen. This is an ever-shifting tourism landscape, there's no doubt about it. Our time and our resources continue to be limited, especially following multiple crises. You know, for Oregon specifically, yes, there was a pandemic. Yes, there was social unrest, and there was also a devastating wildfire season. And we need to make sure that social justice and racial equity is at the forefront of all of our decisions going forward. The next place that we saw a request for a change was within the plan itself. And while not directly relevant to the objectives, I wanted to just put these out for you as framework that, again, the objectives of the rebuild plan are continuing to support the industry's rebuild from COVID-19 and to build that transformational strategic plan for the future. Within that, we've adopted 5 imperatives that are proposed as part of the rebuild plan. First, leading with a racial equity lens, rebuilding the statewide economic impact, supporting and empowering Oregon's tourism industry, championing the value of tourism, and running as an effective business. The specific change that was requested is under the support and empower Oregon's tourism industry and the key actions. Under number 4, the previous version had spoken to partnering and supporting with public land management agencies with an emphasis on outdoor recreation and wildfire prevention. it was pointed out to us that obviously, while that vernacular is often used as kind of short form for all resource management agencies, that there may be some who don't necessarily feel included, and yet we think they are included and they're highly valuable partners to us. So we clarified that by striking the word land management, inserting the words natural resource management, and adding the parens for local, state, federal, and tribal, so that we're very clear that this is a very holistic approach in terms of the public natural resource management agencies that we're looking to partner with and support as we move forward with this rebuild plan. That brings me to the budget. We asked Tourism Economics to revisit the revenue forecast as a result of how the revenues were received in June of this year. And you'll notice there is a modification to the baseline for FY21. When the commission met in February, our budget at that time was roughly $16 million. Tourism Economics was forecasting $21 million in FY21 for their baseline scenario. I asked the commission to adopt a budget of $20 million. Again, going back to that concept that this is a highly fluid environment. We didn't know in February, would there be another variant? Would there be another shut? We just didn't know. So I asked for your consideration of a $20 million budget, which you approved. We are now at 21.8 million. I realize this is 22.1 for FY21. There is an accrual and that will be provided to the commission in July. We don't know what that amount is, but the delta between 21.8 million and 22.1 is reasonable, given the historical pattern of what that accrual amount is. And even though it's remitted to us in July, it is accounted for as part of this fiscal year. So we believe that's an appropriate baseline for us to consider our planning against. You'll notice that does increase all numbers for forecasts for FY22 and FY23, even the downside. What I note when I look at this is that the delta between the baseline and upside is narrower than the delta between the baseline and the downside scenarios. And what that tells me, and what I spoke to Jeff Locker with Tourism Economics about, is that upside lift is stronger than the downside risk. So when we are looking at forecasting for the future, the confidence in at least that baseline amount seems reasonable as we consider our budget going forward. So what I am proposing, and what the next slide will indicate to you, is you'll see at the top the actuals for this current biennium that we're in, 2019-2020. The actual transient lodging tax received was 39.7 million. This current year, 2020-2021, we're again estimating our forecast is the $22.1 million figure. That's down 44% from where we were last year. So total transient lodging tax for this current biennium, 61.8 million, down 21% over the previous biennium. Moving forward, what I am proposing is, excuse me, if we could go back to that slide, thank you. Moving forward, for 2021-22, I am recommending a budget of 30.7 million in the first year. That's a 39% increase. The baseline scenario from Tourism Economics is 35% growth. The upside scenario is 46% growth. I believe that this is both reasonable and appropriate to be, while it may feel a little more aggressive than baseline, having had the opportunity to talk through this scenario with Tourism Economics, I believe it's both reasonable and appropriate that we could look to a 39% increase in the first year of 2021-22, 30.7 million. Second year of the biennium, 22-23, an increase of 9% to 33.5 million. If you were to look at any of the scenarios, downside, upside, and baseline, including the one I am now proposing to you, which is kind of a baseline plus, scenario. Basically what you're seeing is, and the question is what do we think this recovery slope is going to look like in the first year? Is it 35%? Is it 39%? Is it 46%? And then it begins to level off. Is it 7? Is it 9? Is it 10? And it seems to tie to, if you think it's 35%, it's going to be 10 in the second year. If it's going to be 46%, it's going to be 7 in the second year. So it's really about how accelerated do we think the recovery will be in the first year. And what I'm proposing is 39% in year 1, 9% in year 2, which will give us a total transient lodging tax budget of $64.2 million, which is 4%, which is a 4% increase over the current biennium's budget of $61.8 million. Put into the budget on the next slide, the slide that you're all familiar with, the infamous donut chart. What you'll see here is the $64.2 million that is being proposed for the statewide transient lodging tax revenue. That's the 4% increase over the current biennium. There's roughly $573,000 in additional resource. And we are recommending a one-time transfer from our operating reserve of $470,000. This does keep our reserve fund in accordance with our policy of at least 5% of our annual transient lodging tax budget held in reserve. And the dollar amount is for the second year. So for that bigger year, the $33 million 22-23 fiscal year of transient lodging tax revenue will be in alignment with that. So a total budget of $65.2 million, not obviously counting in any of the rollover amounts that would be from this fiscal into the next fiscal. You also see on the right-hand side the breakouts by department, the statutory encumbrances for grants and RCTP, some additional resource for grants that are coming through this part of the budget. The admin operations budget's roughly 9% of total. And what this budget anticipates is the addition of 5 additional FTE to the Travel Oregon staff. As we've gone through the pandemic, and it was referenced earlier at the onset of the meeting, Travel Oregon has not been immune from the impacts of COVID-19. 30% of our staff were laid off roughly a year ago this month. Salary reductions were made for all remaining staff, and many of those were gradually restored as we moved through this fiscal year. As we've entered into this strategic planning process, we're also undertaking a review of our organization, which includes our organizational design, our business processes, and the like. And that conversation alone can result in concern. What will be the outcomes of an organizational design process? I want to be really clear that my intention with the organizational design process is not for the layoffs, never has been. And instead, what we're anticipating for the next biennium is, at this point with this rebuild budget, is the addition of 5 additional staff. 2 in global marketing, 1 in destination development, and 2 within our operations team. There are additional staff that have also been staffing requests that have been brought forward by the VPs, all valid, all legitimate, all warranted further consideration, and all will be considered as part of the organizational design process as we go forward, because the timing that was anticipated, that was brought forward by the VPs for those specific positions, all occurred post the org design when that will be done. As you'll recall, we're looking at the transformational plan and org design to be wrapped up this fall, winter, and brought before the commission in January, February of 22. So these additional positions that were being contemplated all happen after that organizational design process. So with that, I will conclude my presentation, my recap of the changes that have been made based on the comments that were received. The final slide that I have for you, of course, shows the budget using the state budget classification codes. And this is something that we have been providing the commission so that you have the opportunity to also see, if this were done using state budget classification codes, exactly how the budget would break out as well. And we think it's important at the request of the Legislative Fiscal Office to be sure and share it with you in this form as well. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners may have at this time. Nigel.
Yeah, I have one, and this might put you on the spot, so I don't know if you have the exact answer to it, but prior to COVID, what percentage of our travel came from, as it sort of relates to transient lodging tax, comes from the international side of travel?
That's a great question, and you're never putting me on the spot, Nigel. You should be free to ask me any question you want. Our work with Runyon and Associates, and also the work we've done with Tourism Economics, has told us, as estimated for us, that the amount of destination spending that's occurring in Oregon as a result of international visitation is roughly 1 out of every $8 that's being spent in Oregon, so roughly 12%.
Great, thank you. And then did that, I guess it's a little bit maybe leading, but you're expecting the 39% increase in revenue on the first year. How do you think international travel will come back over the first year versus year 2 and subsequent years, only because vaccination rates aren't as high in other parts of the world?
Well, I feel like I need to issue a spoiler alert since Petra and Jeff are going to be presenting to us a little later this morning and walking us through what we anticipate happening over the course of the biennium, both looking back, what happened in 2020, but also looking ahead and how we see that recovery occurring. There's little doubt that Canada is being looked at as a significant early return market. Yes, vaccination rates are not as high. Most of that 39%, to be candid, domestic leisure. It's going to be domestic leisure. Domestic business and domestic group will lag behind that, and international will probably be right in there with that. So you're seeing this kind of phased recovery in not only domestic and international, but also just the segments of the tourism industry itself, leisure, business, group.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Kenji.
So along the same lines, do those numbers include potential revenues from Oregon 2022, or is that still fluid at this moment, so you didn't include that in those numbers?
Well, it's not, a major event like Oregon 22 isn't necessarily embedded in a revenue forecast. So while it's anticipated, we know it's coming. It's taken in, and it's for us, it's able to be taken into account. However, we also believe that most of the upside of Oregon 22 is not only the immediate economic impact that will result from folks being able to come to Oregon and experience the World Athletics Championships here, but also from the media coverage being broadcast back to dozens, if not hundreds of countries, and that awareness of Oregon growing, and what that will mean, 12 to 18 months post Oregon 22. So it's it almost starts influencing future forecast more than it influences what will happen summer of 22.
Okay. And then as a slightly separate topic, do you think 5 FTE positions will be good enough, or are you looking at if revenues exceed and you start getting more work and start to get too busy, that you'll then ask for budget modification at that time? Yeah,
my comment to the team on that very comment is that, because the question came up, are we waiting for the org design, for any new staff or any positional changes or and such? And it's like, if there's a policy, a program, or a position that's impeding our ability to deliver on our strategic objectives, of course, we need to address it now, and we will. And that's why, in advance of the org design being completed, you're seeing the 5 additional FTE put in. There were 4 other FTE that were also suggested that are going to be put in place post and considered post the org design. The org design will be ready, roughly in 6 months. So, we could be sitting here at our February commission meeting And you'll be hearing me present a transformational plan and budget and some additional FTE that would be included in that as well. So the 5 are for this initial, for the next 6 months. And then we'll be looking at any additional staffing needs as part of that transformational plan and strategy.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for the questions.
I have a comment actually on the rebuild plan, which looks great. Thank you. I am in our industry, which, as you know, the wine industry brings tremendous amount of economic boost to the state. Currently, our greatest concerns are water and the fires. So I was interested in seeing your point on number 4 about our natural resources. And I would just like to state that I think as an organization, we need to continue to be mindful of our stewardship and responsibility for the land and the water and the environment as we move forward as an organization. I think it's going to become increasingly important to tourism, not to mention our state, but just to emphasize that point. So thank you for including that piece, but just to, again, kind of reinstate that importance.
Thank you, Maria. Couldn't agree more. Greg.
What is the current office setting? Is it still online meetings and or are people returning to offices? And
It's very, I mean, people being in the office, it's very infrequent.
Okay.
We've had some instances where folks are in the office. I am usually in the office 3 days a week, 3 or 4 days a week. And there are maybe other folks that are coming in. Our destination development team had a planning retreat recently, and they spent some of it in the office and some of it at an offsite location. So we've had some instances of that. We've also had some folks in the office this week that said, this is my first time back in the office since we were supposed to stay home to flatten the curve for 2 weeks, so last spring. And they were cleaning the plants, the dead plants out of their office, that they thought could get through those first 2 weeks back in March. So it's we're looking, and the state is talking about, what does return to the workplace look like? We have formed a work group of our staff team. We've done a survey of our staff team to ask them what that could look like. What, is it hybrid? How do we maintain our culture? What are the things that are important to us as a team as we move forward? They've just had their very first meeting. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from that work group as we move forward and look to what does return to workplace look like later this year.
Yeah, personally, it posed quite a challenge rehiring or hiring people back to a workplace that was virtual. That's a tough way to create culture, but you'll do it well, I'm sure. Good luck.
We're blessed with a great team.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Todd, and commissioners. Thank you all for the discussion. The minutes will reflect that we've received an updated revenue forecast today. We've received and reviewed the Travel Oregon Plan and Budget materials in accordance with Oregon Revised Statute 284, and have received and reviewed additional detailed departmental budgets. A public hearing on the draft plan was properly noticed and held virtually on May 12th, you'll recall. No public comment was received at the May 12th hearing, but written comments were received, and we've had the opportunity to review those, obviously. Staff has considered those comments, and the plan reviewed here today reflects changes in accordance with submitted comments. The 2021-2023 rebuild biennial budget we are adopting today is, as you noted from the slide a moment ago, $65,243,100. Departmental budgets are noted in our materials, and again, we reviewed them together today and will be reflected in our meeting minutes. Encumbered rollover will remain in department budget, and any unencumbered rollover may be shifted to other departments after the books are closed, pending commission approval, of course. Following the final close of the 2019-2021 biennium, any resulting accrual would be brought forward to the commission at an upcoming meeting for a budget modification. That's a lot, so I'll pause. Are there questions about any of that so far? All right then. So in response to the updated strategic plan and budget reviewed today, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the 2021 through 2023 rebuild strategic plan and budget presented to us today. May I have that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Kenji. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nigel. Any discussion? Then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposition? So then the motion to adopt the 2021 through 23 budget of $65,243,100 is passed. Thank you for that. Friends, now seems like a good opportunity to take a 5-minute break if you're all amenable to that. Before we do, I need to apologize publicly to Commissioner Dawn Anway. I mentioned at the outset that some of our commissioners weren't with us today, and I neglected to mention Commissioner Anway. Dawn's obviously not here. He's someplace having fun. I would argue not more fun than us, but fun nonetheless. So with that, my apologies, Dawn, and we will see you all here in about 5 minutes. I have 9:51, so maybe 9:56, 9:57. All right, see you soon.
Commissioners, welcome back. Happy to get started with our reports, updates, and discussions. As I do want to also offer a very sincere note of gratitude to the members of the Travel Oregon team who have worked diligently over the past few months to build that rebuild plan and budget that was presented to you earlier and that you adopted just a few minutes ago. And certainly a key contributor to that entire effort is our comptroller, Kathleen Stewart. And Kathleen, I just want you to know how very, very grateful I am for your engagement and your wisdom and your financial prowess in helping us put together our revenue forecasts over the past many weeks that we've poured over some numbers together, you with the members of the exec team and other members of the staff as well. So Kathleen, thank you as always for your diligent efforts on our behalf. There's no question in my mind, and I believe in the minds of the commission, and should there be in the minds of our staff and our industry partners as well, as to why you and our financial team are consistently bringing home gold stars and honor roll mentions for the great work that's happening within the financial program at Travel Oregon. So Kathleen, thank you so very, very much for your efforts in that regard.
Todd, quick thing for you. Didn't you recently also receive a gold star on June 3rd, perhaps, for the accounting? And
that's exactly the one I'm referring to, Kenji, that we just recently received notice of the gold star for our financial reporting for this year, as well as being named to an honor roll, which is a separate accounting program that comes out of the Chief Financial Officer's office within the Department of Administrative Services. So it's always interesting to me that not every state agency earns the gold star and the honor roll mention, but I know it's something. Well, commissioners know I take it very seriously. I assure you, Kathleen takes it even more so, and that's a reason why we have consistently been recognized with both the gold star and the honor roll for as many years going back as I can recall. So, but thank you, Kenji, for mentioning that. Commissioners, our first update this morning is brought to you by Hillary Sagar, who's our Destination Development Manager, and Kelda Schmidt, who's our Manager in Marketing Services. And they're going to be highlighting some of the efforts of our teams coming together to provide some really innovative support for our industry partners. Hillary, Kelda, thank you for your presentation this morning.
Thanks, Todd. Hello, Chair Youngblood and commissioners. We're very excited to be with you in person this morning and to be able to share with you a little bit about a project the Destination Development and Global Marketing teams have collaborated on over the last year to support the industry. So I wanted to begin today's presentation with a bit of a throwback to the COVID-19 recovery plan that came together in response to the pandemic in 2020 and really guided the agency through the months that followed. The plan included several strategies, including Strategy 7, which focused on how Travel Oregon could design impactful of-the-moment trainings and engage the tourism industry with the goal of expediting economic recovery. The Virtual Training Engagement and Assistance Program, or VT, was born out of this strategy, creating a platform to provide key information and trainings and engage the tourism industry. Key information and trainings to the industry, often in coordination with partners and other agencies. You'll be hearing from Kelda and I today about a series of webinars our teams co-designed under the VT banner to provide trainings in essential marketing topics, specifically targeted for small and medium-sized tourism businesses and DMOs. As we know, Travel Oregon, and especially the Destination Development team, has a long history of convening and facilitating in-person industry engagements and technical trainings for businesses. We have convened workshops for tour operators, guides and outfitters, business engagements and marketing trainings for businesses along our food and farm trails, and Oregon tourism studios in all 7 regions. We also work closely with our DMOs, chambers, destination action teams, and networks on a daily basis. And these examples really just begin to scratch the surface of all the industry touch points happening across all teams at Travel Oregon. When the pandemic hit, many of these touch points actually increased, Despite the limitations to in-person engagements, we were hearing from RDMOs every week. We are gathering industry inputs through formal surveys and also countless informal conversations. This influx of information allowed destination development and the organization overall to get a clear read on the types of challenges businesses were facing. We heard how businesses were needing to adapt nearly every component of their business model to align with COVID guidelines that were sometimes changing on a weekly basis. For most businesses, this meant narrowing the scope of their operation significantly or transitioning to an entirely different model as a short-term solution. Also at this time, consumers were becoming even more reliant on the information available online to make decisions around which businesses to patronize and how to spend their money. If it was unclear, for example, in Google, whether a business was still open or what their adopted offerings were, customers would be inclined to go elsewhere. From a marketing and customer acquisition standpoint, this was a serious wake-up call for any business that had been lagging in their efforts to optimize their business presence online. Things like having an outdated website, maybe a reluctance to engage in social media, or perhaps, and maybe most importantly, confusion around how to claim their business listing in Google had become exponentially consequential to their ability to stay open. Hearing loud and clear these challenges that businesses were facing with digital marketing fundamentals, I reached out to Kelda and the global marketing department to see if we could pivot some of the trainings we had traditionally offered in person to an online format through the new virtual training engagement and assistance program that Travel Oregon was preparing to launch. And so now I'll pass it to Kelda to share with you the results of that collaboration.
Thanks, Hillary. So to address these challenges that Hillary just touched on, the destination development and global marketing teams came together to craft a simple solution that we could easily deploy virtually. So we designed the Small Business Marketing Series, a collection of marketing webinars to help small businesses navigate the many challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic had been presenting them. We crafted topics based on our industry feedback and tapped into the expertise of Travel Oregon staff, as well as our trusted partners, including ThinkShout, Miles Media, Media America, and Local, to provide these sessions. We've offered 6 webinars so far from September of 2020 through March of 2021 that cover a variety of marketing strategies and topics. Businesses have had the opportunity to learn about everything from pivoting your social media strategy to demystifying the world of search engine optimization. And because the needs for support don't end when you log off of a Zoom, we also provided the opportunity for one-on-one appointments with session experts as a bonus resource for attendees, and have made all presentations and recorded webinars available on Travel Oregon's industry site and in YouTube channels. The past 18 months have not always served us and our industry a lot of wins, but the feedback we received from our tourism industry served as a bright spot and inspires us to continue this good work. As you can see here, we've had just over 400 people attend our live webinars and have 753 video views and counting on our YouTube channel. The feedback we've collected in our post-webinar surveys will help us shape the upcoming sessions that we will continue to offer in the future. And now I'll pass it over to Hillary to give you a sneak peek into what you can see next from this series.
Thanks, Kelda. I think the response of the industry really makes both of our teams excited to continue to engage in this collaborative work. So coming up, we will be continuing to offer local trainings, the next one later this month. At the end of the month, we'll be offering a final webinar in the series, at least for this fiscal year, a content creation how-to webinar that will be led by the foodie duo behind a popular Instagram account, FoodBellyPDX. We will continue to connect businesses in the industry to these recorded webinars and resources through our industry newsletter and other industry touch points. And we're continuing to explore ways to provide businesses with direct marketing support and training, including a series of pilot projects currently underway where our consultants are conducting digital footprint audits for businesses that will result in personalized recommendations for ways to improve the quality and accuracy of their business's information online. as well as follow-up support to help implement those recommendations. So we're currently supporting 65 businesses across 4 pilot projects that were all awarded funding through the Destination Ready program earlier this year. So stay tuned for an update on that work at a future commission meeting. And we'll take any questions that there might be.
All right, great job. Thank you both. Commissioners, questions for Hillary and Kelda?
That's absolutely fantastic. Thanks for the great presentation. Have businesses been really receptive in starting to take action on some of the trainings that they've done? Have you seen that sort of play through after you've gone through that with any follow-up? Because all this information in terms of helping with social media presence is just so important. And I'd love to see some of the outcomes and check out maybe perhaps some websites of some folks who went through this process.
Yeah, we've definitely heard that the implementation is definitely part of the challenge, right? Like you can sit through a training and learn a lot of new skills, but having the time to then sit down and implement those skills is a whole other beast. So actually, that's why I'm excited about this digital footprint audit pilot program that we're doing, because it is more direct work one-on-one with businesses, and also provides some of that capacity on the implementation side. It's a lot harder to track those kinds of things in a webinar setting where we're not even totally sure who's tuned in. So it's hard to do some follow-up, but we have heard the positive feedback through the surveys from those webinars that folks are at least very receptive to the training and would like to see more of these kinds of trainings. But yeah, I'm also interested to see how many people are able to implement what they learn.
Good. And a follow-up question, in terms of those 65 in that digital footprint sort of program, what stage are they at right now, most of them?
So right now, 2 of those pilot projects have basically completed. So the businesses in those first 2 projects have received a report based on their audit and have had an opportunity to sit down one-on-one for an hour consultation with the marketing professional who did their audit. And then a lot of them are offering workshops to the full group based on trends that came out of the audits. And then the other 2 groups are kind of in the middle of the auditing process and are queued up to be complete later this summer.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Richard?
So a question about the consultation is that really very much hands-on? That's the support you were talking about. So do you actually walk people through the steps they need to do to implement some of the recommendations?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also kind of up to the business to decide how they want to use. Everyone's guaranteed that 1 hour consultation, and a lot of projects have additional budget for additional support beyond that. So the 1 hour is kind of wrapped up into the audit process. So you're not just handed this big report that can be very overwhelming, and instead you have that opportunity to ask questions about what's in the report and maybe go through the steps of something like claiming your business on Google. That might be achievable in an hour.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of this, because those reports, I'm sure, can be overwhelming, as you said. So the hands-on support. Do many of the businesses choose some additional consultation time to really dig into things?
Yeah, we're kind of in that stage of the program right now. So it's sort of TBD how many have the capacity, especially during the summer, to opt into additional kind of meetings with a consultant. And hopefully the approach of doing some virtual workshops targeted for those business groups will allow people an easier way to engage, but it's definitely different than meeting one-on-one about your specific business. So more to come.
Okay, thanks.
So is this great job, by the way. I love it. Is it something that will continue, you think, as we move past the pandemic? I mean, do you think you know there's such value that you'll continue these webinars in some form?
Yes, I believe we have every intention of doing that. And I think we look forward to continuing it in person or virtually as we are able. I think we've learned a lot this last year. I think My last time I was with you all was our last in-person commission meeting, which is
Gosh, that's
odd
right.
after 18 months of living so virtually. But I think we've also seen that we can really benefit our reach by tapping into to Zoom and to leveraging more long-term evergreen content that we can have living on our website or our YouTube channels to reference and to just regularly direct people to those resources. So we absolutely have every intention of continuing it and look forward to ways to keep progressing it as well.
It's great. I love it. I think it really helps, especially small businesses, to strengthen their businesses and outreach. So good job. Kudos.
Thanks, Maria.
I would just add, Hillary and Kelda, thank you, I guess, first for the remarkable presentation and, more importantly, the remarkable work that it supports. But these past 16 months have, I heard someone characterize recently, for all of us, been kind of the cruelest possible choose your own adventure book. And we've all had to make these series of choices and decisions on behalf of our lives and our businesses and our family, everything. And, sometimes you turn the right way and sometimes you don't. To be able to look at an example like this that you're explaining to us, that you're demonstrating to us today, where one right decision after the next, after some guided by intuition, some guided by the things that you learn in communicating along the way, but to continue forging a path through a period of time, which with so much uncertainty, I mean, you could shrug, you could shrug, check the clock and wait for it to be over, but you haven't. And the benefit that you've brought to the industry and to these specific partners is really inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you. It definitely has been a bright spot for us, I think. So appreciate your comments.
Any other questions, commissioners? Bravo to you both. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Kelda, so very much for being with us this morning, bringing the report and delivering on this promise. That's great work. It's really great work. So thank you. Commissioners, our next update and report out was put together very quickly in response to Nigel's question earlier about international. So Petra ran screaming from the room, contacted Tourism Economics, and then in the last 30 minutes have pulled together this response to Nigel's question. So at this point, it's my pleasure to turn the floor over to Petra Hackworth, who's our Vice President of Global Sales at Travel Oregon, to talk to us about international visitation to Oregon.
Thanks, Todd. I wish I was that fast, but that's not true. We spent a lot of time on this presentation. We, of course, had to make many updates along the way as things were changing on the daily. I just want to comment, too, that the last time I saw all of you was in Independence, and that's when the pandemic was starting. And I remember presenting to you on the Chinese market and how the China market probably won't be as big as it was the year before. And it just seems like that was so naive, like we had no idea what was coming, but it's just so lovely to see all of you in person again. And it's just great to be here. Today I have presenting with me Jeff Locker, who I believe is on. Yes. He's a senior economist at Tourism Economics, and you might remember him from typically the commission meeting that goes along with the governor's conference. We present on the numbers of the year before, the year prior. And we all know this last year was devastating, especially with international markets, with all the borders being closed and very few international travelers coming to Oregon. We're not really going to focus as much on the past year as we would like to focus on the future of international travel to the United States and Oregon and what that will look like. We are going to focus on our 4 primary markets, which are Japan, UK, Germany, and Canada. And of course, talk a little bit about the market we've all been hearing about on the webinars we're attending and through Brand USA and all the different avenues where we get information, the China market, which will be really important for us in the future as well. So I'll have Jeff take it away.
Sure, thank you, Petra, and it's great to be here again with the commission. Hope to see you guys in person next year. Are we up in screen sharing now?
Jeff, hold on just a second. I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me.
Give it a try.
Can you hear me now? No?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And screen share is up and running?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. All right, let's try that again. Again, thanks again to the commission for having me here. Always wonderful to talk to you guys, and hopefully it'll be in person next year. So when I'm usually doing this, we're talking about what happened last year and what are some of the insights we can glean from it. But given how little happened the past year or so, we're not really going to go over those numbers, and we're really going to discuss what the future holds. And we're going to do that in two ways. One, looking at some research we previously did for you guys on how your international market behaves, and looking kind of at some key insights as to some indications of which markets might be better in the near and long term in this pandemic recovery. And then we're going to look at the economic forecast of how do we see both visitor volume and spending returning over the next few years. So with that, I'll take it away. And first, I'm going to discuss this prior research we did from the SIAT, and that's the Survey of International Air Travelers. So this is a survey that the NTTO does every year, National Travel and Tourism Office. They survey about 80,000 international visitors every year. So we got some custom data pulled from them, and we combined Oregon and Washington just to boost our sample size and get better statistically sound results. So, they ask like 100 different questions, and we're just going to kind of highlight some of the key ones as we see it. The first thing we wanted to look at is purpose of trip. So here they break it down as leisure, business, VFR, visiting friends and relatives, and other. And the key thing here, we think, is that business travel is going to be recovering much slower than leisure VFR travel. So countries with low shares of business are going to come back a bit faster. High shares of business, they're going to come back a little slower. So you can see this indicator bodes well for Australia, UK, Germany, South Korea, and at the same time bodes poorly for Japan and India, with their pretty high degree of business travel there. The next thing we want to look at is specific activities, and this is probably in the very short term. Who are kind of going to be the first types of international travelers, right as borders start to reopen. And we suspect that urban recreation is still going to be depressed for a little while. So people interested in seeing the cities, aren't going to come here as fast. We think the sports outdoors is probably going to be the main attraction in the immediate post-pandemic world. And here we see generally the Western countries, although Australia in there, score a bit higher on the sports outdoors index. And I should say this is just an index we compiled from a bunch of questions they ask on what types of things did you do on your vacation. And yeah, the Europeans and the Western countries tend to spend a lot of time on sports and outdoors, whether that's hiking, golfing, going to a sporting event. But this is what we expect to be big in the near future. Meanwhile, the more developing markets tend to be more into urban recreation, and that's going to be slow, we think, right off the bat. So immediately, they might not take off quite as much. Finally, we kind of wanted to, we're going to end up creating an index of what we think some of your key markets are and who do we really think you need to target the most. And we did this with a combination of our data and this data from the NTTO and the SIAT. So first thing we did is come up with these kind of 6 key data points for each of the major markets. First 2 are just kind of the size of the market, both number of visitors to Oregon and amount of spending in Oregon. And the other things are just kind of what defines a favorable market now and going forward. High spending per trip, a high share of leisure, high share of people staying in hotels, and the forecasted growth rate over the next 10 years or so. And to do this, we then index each of those individual categories and then create kind of two final indices. One that includes the size of the market. That's there of these two indices that's on the left side here. And then one that excludes the market. So kind of more on a per visitor basis, who do we think is most valuable? And the key things that come out of this, first off, it's just China. China's just really stands out far and above everyone else as a great market to target. Not only are they a huge market, but they're growing very fast. They have a fairly high leisure percent, and they spend a lot per trip. So they're just a great market for any number of reasons, and really do stand head and shoulders above the other top markets. Due to the size of their market, just in terms of raw visitors and spending, Japan and the UK do very well. And then when we look as we exclude the size and are just kind of looking at them on a per visitor basis, South Korea and Australia both do very well. Again, high spending or fast growth rates really boosting those countries in the near future. So now switching gears into our forecast of how we think the recovery is going to look. This is the tourism economics international forecast to America, so the whole nation. We see visitor volume getting pretty close to 2019 levels in 2024. So this is going to be a multi-year recovery. Spending probably the next year, 2025. And you'll just see, when you look at 2020, that kind of seems high from where we're standing now, but you got to remember we did have 2.5 months of pretty good visitation, and that amounted to the bulk of that 25%. 2021, we're going to see it hopefully start to increase in the pretty near future here, and we think there will be kind of an initial surge of international tourism once the border gets lifted, with a lot of VFR and business just happening right off the bat. Then afterwards, just you're gonna have very fast growth, but still not back to 2019 levels until 2024 or so. Here, this will be included in a deck we pass around to everybody after the meeting, but just to look at the numbers, we highlighted the recovery year for all this data. For Oregon, we think you'll be back above your 2019 level in 2024. A lot of that due to high exposure to Canada, which we see as a very fast recovering market. Around the world, we're suspecting that short-haul international travel will recover faster than long-haul international travel. So, good exposure to Canada is a positive here. You'll also note overseas travel, the numbers not recovering to 2025, and Japan being the slowest recovering market. Spending, a pretty similar story. Most of the major markets we have recovering in 2024, but overall, it'll be 2025 before the total and overseas spending returns to 2019 levels. Again, Canada leading the recovery, and Japan being on the slow side. What we're watching for from some of these top markets, just worth talking about briefly. For Canada, the two things we're wondering is one, once the border reopens, how is their trip behavior going to be different? Are they going to concentrate more in the border states, or are they going to be flying to California and Florida and all over? We'd suspect, at least right out of the gates, it'll be car trips. So again, you guys stand to benefit there. At the same point in time, not quite as much as Washington stands to benefit. The next question being the currency. So the Canadian loonie, the Canadian dollar, has actually improved significantly versus the US dollar in the past few months, gaining about 10% of value. And historically, there's been a very strong connection between the strength of the Canadian dollar and Canadian visits to the US. So that should boost visitation significantly. And we'll have to see, does that is this kind of new exchange rate, is it going to hold? Is it going to slide back? Is it going to strengthen further? After being stable for about 4 years, it took a really sharp increase recently. So we'll see if that sticks. China, I think, an interesting thing here is they had a very slow recovery out of the SARS pandemic back in 2003. And, we're kind of wondering, will it be similar to that? Or, there's some reasons to think it won't be. Given just how strong their economy was in 2020 compared to the rest of the world, they're not suffering economically as much as the globe. And B, 17 years ago is just such a long time ago for China. They've changed so much since then that might not be a relevant comparison this time around. A second question is, can they just keep this hot growth pace up that they have the past 15 years or so? And we are going to assert that they will. You've already seen some of the numbers on our projected growth in previous slides, but we'll review why we expect them to keep up with that pace in the near future. Moving to the UK, big questions there is how badly will Brexit impact the economy? It's bad for them, and that will probably hamper their recovery out of the pandemic. On the brighter side, from a U.S. perspective, will the Brexit end up driving more travelers to the U.S.? So, previously it was very easy to hop over to Spain or or Greece, Cyprus for a nice beach vacation. And now it's still a little bit easier than going to the U.S., but will just those kind of extra bureaucratic barriers that now exist drive more British travelers to come over to the U.S. Finally, Japan. You're hosting the World Athletics Championships in 2022. They're hosting the Olympics probably this year. So we're going to see, is there, they're big into that, and will that boost visitation both in 2022 and, hopefully some momentum can be sustained after that may boost their numbers in the recovery. The final, a couple things we want to talk about is, why we believe in international tourism and, specifically some of those developing markets. So when we're forecasting travel growth, we don't look at GDP growth, we don't look at job growth, we don't look at income growth. We mainly look at middle-class household growth. So, if you're not making a middle-class income, you're probably not traveling internationally. So the countries that add a lot of middle-class households are going to be the countries that start sending out more and more international tourists. And you see the US there near the bottom at 6%, and those developing countries, much higher than that. So they're the ones that are going to be creating these new international tourists. And China's just so big that even though they've been going through this explosive growth, there's just hundreds of millions of middle-class households that they still need to add into their economy. So we'll expect fast growth over the next 10 years. India's next. I mean, it's number one here, and they're going to be the next big market. They're going to experience growth over the next 20 years, like China has over the past 20 years. So get ready for them as well. And then we did just want to close with, we still really believe in international tourism. Historically, international tourism spending has outpaced domestic tourism spending pretty handily. And, it's going to take a while, but we do see that happening in the future. The domestic is leading the recovery and will continue to lead recovery for a while, but we think by around 2026, the stronger international growth rate will mean it overtakes domestic in the recovery out of the pandemic. So it's going to take a while this time, but again, we expect to see international tourism growing faster over the decade. All right, then just a few final key thoughts. One, we encourage our clients to, not expect big changes in long-term travel behavior. So every time there's a recession, I think the big think pieces come out on how tourism is going to be so different after this recession. And we'd caution to think that it's probably not going to be all that different. But you're going to be sitting there in 2025, the picture is going to look a lot like 2019. So don't expect it to be an enormous shift in how travelers behave, even though everything seems so drastically different right now. Just one last time, got to mention China, huge growth market, huge market in general, high spending per traveler. They're just a great market to target. I think the last thing to mention is there may be some amount of pent-up demand stemming from a lack of travel to the U.S. during the Trump administration. So if there are easing of international tensions there over the next several years, that could be a reason to expect even faster growth over the next decade. Mentioned Canada again; they'll be your fastest international market to bounce back. We're hoping to hear as soon as something like July that there'll be some sort of cross-border agreement. That's our expected date at the moment. So we should start seeing them soon. And finally, I just wanted to, some other kind of things we got from the SIAD and how people travel and do activities is that the UK and Germans tend to travel widely. So, these are the people that are going to get out into all the areas and really spread the spending and economic impact throughout the whole state, as opposed to just concentrating in a few key markets. So they're an attractive market from that rate. And with that, I'll hand it back to Petra.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Before we take questions for Jeff, I really want to just highlight a few things that we've gathered from our international offices that have been working tirelessly to make sure Oregon is still front of mind when the borders do open. I'll start with China. We haven't really talked about China too much in this last year with the commission, but we do still have a presence in China on Weibo and WeChat. So that's their big social media platforms. And this is great because we just didn't want to lose the momentum that we already had, as that was our largest overseas market in 2019. We do have the infrastructure to get the Chinese traveler to Oregon. There are 17 flights. Pre-pandemic, there were 17 flights a week going into Seattle. And there are currently 2, and I did talk to my counterpart up there, and they do expect some of those flights to come back. And we've announced this already, but just a reminder that Delta Airlines will start service from Incheon, Seoul, Korea to PDX this year on September 9th. And this will be a really easy one-stop connection to PDX through 80 different Asian cities that the connections will go to. So really excited about that. South Korea was already a really big market for us, and it has substantial growth over the last 5 years of 23% from 2014 to 2019. So our Japan office has been in constant contact with the Delta team in Tokyo, and we have the new service from Haneda coming to PDX this fall. There's no, I see a smile. There's no set date, but they do expect a launch this fall, and they're hoping that international travel will also resume at the end of the year this year. This is great news. We know our international visitors love the nonstop flights, so we're really excited about that. For Canada, as of June 14th, 64% of the population has received their first dose of the vaccine. They do have really tight restrictions across Canada, but they're loosening, and they anticipate to have the Canada-USA border opened in early July with some restrictions for people who are vaccinated, who have dual citizenships and things like that. The research does show that the trans-border will be 75% of the room nights that come to the United States. So these are the people that are driving across the borders to stay in Washington, Oregon. And so we will be focusing heavily on British Columbia in the very near future, as we have been during this entire pandemic. And the Air Canada nonstop service from Vancouver will start on June 18th this year, or this month. So switching gears to over the Atlantic, as of Monday, 27% of the German population has been fully vaccinated, and Germany had a really slow start to the vaccine. And this was basically because there wasn't they didn't have the vaccine that they needed. And then that kind of changed the perception of people's in their mindset to actually get the vaccine. So Germany did do a really big campaign to get people vaccinated. So now that it's going quicker and quicker all the time. So yeah, the vaccine growth has increased significantly. And we do have great news with the flights from Europe. Condor Airlines via Frankfurt and Iceland Air flights are currently for sale in the system. So if any of you want to go to Europe, you can book those flights, and they will resume service to PDX in July. So with the UK market, yesterday it was announced that they will have 4 more weeks of a lockdown in the UK. Currently, 57% of the population has had 2 doses of the vaccine, and the whole adult population, for those who want to get the vaccine, should be able to do so by the end of this year. A strong recovery is expected due to the very successful vaccine rollout that they've had, and they are easing some of the restrictions, even though they will be in a lockdown for 4 more weeks. And as you probably heard, just recently, our president was in Cornwall, England, meeting with Prime Minister Boris Johnson in regards to a travel corridor between our 2 countries to get the flights going and business going sooner than some of the other markets. But U.S. travel is working tirelessly to get all the markets open for us. So globally, tour operators expect travelers will put a lot of thought into where they're going on their first post-pandemic trip. They predict destinations with wide open spaces will recover fast. And of course, this is great for Oregon. And all the markets we've discussed today have similar trends in travel sentiments, including increased desire for bucket list trips, more meaningful travel, and longer trips. And of course, you can imagine the global sales team and Travel Oregon were very eager to welcome international travelers back to Oregon, and we're ready to do so as soon as those borders open. So with that, I will take questions, and I believe Jeff is still on for any questions in regards to his presentation as well.
That's great. Petra, thank you. Jeff, thank you. Commissioners, questions for either Jeff or Petra? Richard.
I have one for Jeff. It was interesting to see the significant growth in middle-class households in India. I don't know how large that base is. The question is, how long will it take for India to catch up to the number of households in China? And what does that mean for how early Travel Oregon, might want to start cultivating that market, the Indian market?
Sure. So as far as when they would catch up, that's decades in the future. I mean, again, China just has the head start on them. They're still adding them so quickly that's going to be a long time before they catch up there, if they do ever. As far as targeting them as a market, we didn't investigate them as a key market. I off the top of my head, I want to say they're in kind of the 10 to 15 range for you guys right now in terms of volume and spending. Don't have that off the top of my head, but as we go through the decade, you're going to see them jump up 3 or 4 spots probably on that ranking due to this fast amount of growth. So that's when I get kind of questions about second tier markets that are worth investing in. I think India is a place to go, just because you're not all the states are in there right now or are working very hard there, so you have a chance to grab a big share of the media over there advertising the U.S. So yeah, they're a second tier now, but sometime in the next 20 years they're going to be a first tier market for you.
And can I just add, Richard, to that we were working with Brand USA in the Indian market. Travel Oregon had been there, I believe, 4 years in a row with the Brand USA sales mission and media missions that they had. So we have a good base there. We were one of the first states with maybe 12 other states that went on the Brand USA mission. And as everyone's been hearing about the Indian market now, that it's like a wait list to get in. So we do have a little bit of a foundation there.
I would note it's not the first time that Travel Oregon has been early, and that's paid dividends. So thank you for that.
Other questions?
Yeah, just quickly. Yes. I noticed that the Nordic countries were not on that mid to upper class listing. I'm just kind of curious as to why they were not there. Is Jeff still there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. I guess I just kind of wanted to do individual countries as opposed to conglomerates. But you know, without even looking at it, I can tell you they're going to be in that kind of France, Germany, Japan kind of region. They're just maxed out in terms of their middle class households, and they're not adding a lot of population. So you're just not going to see a ton of growth over the next decade.
Okay, thank you. And then also just follow up and question on Australia. What's the status with Australia? Are they able to come in?
Not yet.
They're still closed down.
Yeah. And we still are working with the office that we had before, couldn't Kiwi in that market. We have some plans to do things next fiscal year. We've just kind of been putting things on hold with that contract for a while, but we will be active.
Yeah, thank you.
Kenji.
Peter, Jeff, thank you so much for another amazing presentation. And yes, I was smiling earlier when you mentioned Haneda. So I actually have two questions, but I'll start with the first one. Excuse me. The Chinese market, there are definitely the political dynamics surrounding the sort of relationships that we have with the Chinese. The question that I have is there are those tensions at the sort of national governmental level, but does that extend to sort of the leisure traveler? What have you heard from the in-market folks about the potential for demand and sort of the sentiment of potential visitors?
We actually, Jeff and I talked about this when we kind of went through the presentation. He started feeling that question would come up, and Jeff, jump in at any time, but it's really too soon to tell. It's kind of what we were discussing, what if the political situation will have really that much of an impact on the leisure traveler.
Okay, thank you. The second question I had was it was from the sort of report, the TAAP, in terms of the presentation to the Japanese folks. Did you get any read on sentiment there too, in terms of is there pent up demand from our Japanese partners?
There is pent up demand, but they're definitely more cautious. And as you see the report that Jeff showed, like they don't rank as high in some of the certain numbers, but we do have the nonstop flight, and Travel Portland and Travel Oregon together have been working really hard in that market for years. We brought the OSC campaign there. Was it last year? No, 2 years ago it had to have been. So we have a really, even though it nationally might not be a strong market for the entire country, we do believe for Portland and Oregon, that will still be a very strong market.
Okay, thank you.
Greg.
Yeah, thank you for the report. My question was related to, and I'm sorry, but one of the screens showed the hotel stays by Chinese market, and it seemed abnormally low at maybe like 55%. Is that just the shopping market, and is there a way to capture those folks for overnight stays?
There definitely is. And Jeff, I don't know if you want to pull that slide up or if you can speak to that a little bit more.
Just briefly talking. I mean, I think that the two things to remember, I'm looking at them, and they're at 56% stayed in hotels. I mean, one, that doesn't include other types of paid accommodations like an Airbnb or something. And two, there's obviously a big chunk of VFR that are not staying in hotels. Looking at this other page, 21% of the Chinese travelers are VFR. So they may just be spending at their friends or relatives' house. So they are low there, but that doesn't prevent them from being the highest spending per trip market.
Okay, and second one, you related Canadian travel definitely increases as their Canadian dollar improves against the US dollar. Is that the same for Mexican peso and Mexican travel as our closest border travel partner as well?
Yes, that'd be true for them. I think a little less so for Oregon. I think the exchange rate probably has a bigger effect on the drive market than the air market, but it's obviously a help.
All right, thank you.
Petra, thank you. I guess first, both to you and Jeff, as you envision these markets opening back up and have maintained dialogues with our partners internationally throughout all of this. I don't mean to, put the question too far out over the skis, but we were seeing some growth in self-drive itineraries in recent years leading up to the pandemic. Do you have any sense, or in your conversations, have you heard anything with regard to a comfort level with guided itineraries versus self-drive itineraries?
Self-drive is definitely going to be the biggest way people travel when they come to Oregon from international markets. We've heard that from every market. Even typical group markets will feel much more comfortable driving themselves. But on the domestic side, like Todd referenced earlier, like the group travel will come back on the domestic market, and Greg's been leading that charge, and he presented on the domestic market the last commission meeting, and we've used the word pivot. We have pivoted quite a bit to the domestic travel trade and groups as well, because we know that will come back first.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Petra, thank you very much. Jeff, thank you for joining us, albeit virtually, but we'll get that border open so we can welcome you back to the American side. So anyway, Jeff, thank you again for your good work, not only on this, but on also helping us with the revenue, the great revenue forecast work that you've been doing for us also throughout the spring. Appreciate your efforts very much. So
always great to be here, Todd. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. And thanks, Petra. Commissioners, our next update is from our VP of Global Marketing, Kevin Wright, who's going to share with us a little bit about what's happening on the advertising front, as well as the work going on with our visitor lifecycle management program. Kevin?
Thank you, Todd. Good morning, commissioners. Great to see you in person once again. It was difficult to leave the sweatpants behind this morning, but I was able to do so, and I'm glad to be here. As Todd mentioned, I'm going to share with you guys an update on our advertising work, Welcome to Oregon, which just recently launched. A quick update on our visitor lifecycle management program, and a look ahead at Oregon Slightly Exaggerated. I'm very happy to report that after a 16-month hiatus from inspirational advertising, we launched Welcome to Oregon again on June 1st. While we're only 2 weeks into the campaign, it's an 8-week effort, we're very excited to be back in the market. And I'm here to share with you some very, very preliminary results. A big caveat with this is it takes at least 2 weeks for data to be rolling in to really make sound decisions and adjustments. And we're today at that 2-week period, and some of the data that you're seeing was pulled about a week ago. So it's somewhat anecdotal, but we're seeing some good things, and I'll walk you through that. Just to reground you guys in the parameters, you've seen this slide before. The campaign is obviously targeted to Oregonians, as we've discussed, and we refined our target audience coming into this campaign to better reflect the BIPOC composition of Oregon and assure we're speaking to a destination-oriented traveler who embraced the ethos of stewardship. For this campaign, we're using impactful creative media placements to drive awareness, create connections, and drive bookings. We'll be inspiring our audience through TV and paid social advertising. We'll be engaging with our audience through digital video and organic social media, and we'll be looking to convert potential travelers through remarketing channels as well as OTAs. To help potential travelers plan their trips within Oregon, paid media will drive visitors to our new hub page, where they can find up-to-date travel resources related to our key messaging pillars of safe travel, business resiliency, and stewardship. We know from research provided by Arrivalist, when our audience is exposed to paid advertising and then they visit our own channels like traveloregon.com, they're 19 times more likely to visit than if they just saw an ad. So only 2 weeks into the campaign, we've generated almost 17,000 page views on our hub page. This actually surpasses traffic generated for the first 2 weeks of our last major ad campaign, only slightly more exaggerated by 5%. So we're excited to see that. The top driver right now is social media, which accounts for about 54% of page traffic, followed by display advertising at 22% and direct at 8%. And just as a reminder, display advertising is you see a banner or an ad and you click through. Direct is you've seen it. You've probably seen it on TV. You've seen it out of home, and you have that memory, and you type it in. Our hero asset for Welcome to Oregon is our 30-second anthem video that I shared with you at our last commission meeting. Across all of our channels, we've generated 83,000 views in only 1 week's time. While this doesn't come close to the viral nature of our Oregon Slightly Exaggerated videos, we're excited to see the video starting to generate traction, and we're happy with the average view duration. As of now, the team is focused on making sure all of our ad spots are running efficiently and watching for opportunities to optimize the buy. In early May, we led our industry partners through a detailed media deck sharing where and when Travel Oregon was planning to push paid media so our partners could make sure their content on travaloregon.com and their websites was ready to see increased traffic. We also shared more detail than we typically have on our paid campaigns because we know it would be critical for us to work together to have impactful campaigns in the market this summer. The toolkit includes a variety of creative assets for our partners to use and leverage the campaign. Moving on to social media, key takeaways include Facebook as our most efficient driver to traffic to travaloregon.com and our most efficient social channel for distributing the 30-second film. In the coming weeks, we'll highlight our landing page content more heavily on Facebook while continuing to promote the 30-second spot. On Instagram, we'll focus on engagement using infographics, guides, and short-form video content. We'll also continue to promote traffic driving ads focused on trip inspiration, like iconic trips to bookmark, which was the highlight, which was our best performer in the first week. In the first week, we also produced and promoted deeper content, including info carousel, this info carousel promoting Summer Bounty and a Take Care Out There guide on Instagram. In total, these new advertising content units drove over 1 million impressions, and the info carousel saw 700 engagements across Instagram and Facebook. I talked about this last week through a lot of the channels through Instagram and Facebook. We have opportunities through these types of ad units to tell much deeper stories. So things like what you're seeing here, as well as being able to convey some of that deeper content via stewardship it's a great medium to be able to tell these deeper stories. For sentiment, overall, people love the creative. Bob Ross is a big hit. People really like the the music score for the spot. A comment that really, I think, resonated with what a lot of people are saying is this commercial reflects the core of Oregon in a perfect way. So we're seeing a lot of positive comments on there. We're also seeing some comments of people saying, where is Oregon Slightly Exaggerated? So that's a positive as well. Nice. We do continue to see some negative comments about Portland related to protests and safety, but it is nice to see in the social space, our community, a lot of Portlanders kind of calling out or answering those comments. You see a trend of people, concerned or voicing concern about Portland that are often maybe not even in the state, maybe it's what they saw on the news, and you'll see Portlanders coming in and chiming in and saying, I'm sitting outside having a great lunch today. So it's nice to see the community police itself in that way. We are also seeing negative comments about tourists from locals being wary of crowds. This is on par with something that we see on average, and it's not surprising. So we continue through our channels to promote dispersion to lesser traffic parts of the state that are hungry for tourism to help their local economy recovery. And as we know, Oregon has some locations with more visitor sensitivity than others. This spring and summer, we've been proactively working with land managers and regional partners to develop messaging to mitigate those impacts by informing visitors about what to expect at these destinations, how to visit them responsibly, or in some cases offering alternatives. Beginning in May and running through September, we'll be running geo-targeted ads around high traffic landmarks on weekends and other busy times, offering responsible travel recommendations. Through this campaign, we'll also be supporting our regional partners by offering a direct investment co-op with 3 online travel agency partners. Each of the 7 regions will receive $70,000 to spend with Kayak, Priceline, and Open Table. Partners can determine their target audience, utilize their own creative, and their own calls to action. The initiative launched yesterday and will wrap on August 29th. Through these OTAs, we're able to reach a huge network of travel intenders and expose them to regional creative and messaging. Beyond bookings, this program delivers regional itineraries, custom influencer content, promotion, and more. To support the campaign's key themes of responsible recreation and business resiliency, the consumer PR team will be highlighting tour operators and guides participating in Travel Oregon's Y Guides program with guided media days in regions near media markets. Itineraries will include a tour of the Mid-Willamette Food Trail from the Independence Hotel via kayak, exploring Mount Hood with a guided water tour, ending the day sampling tasty brews and Cascade Locks after visiting with local artist Heather Soderberg. And we're finalizing plans with the Central Oregon Visitors Association for an active adventure in lesser trafficked parts of the region. In addition, the industry communication team is supporting the campaign this week with a press release and targeted media outreach. Key messages include how this campaign investment ties to Travel Oregon's 21-23 strategic rebuild strategic plan, and the importance of this work in helping the industry rebuild from the numbers captured in the new 2020 Economic Impact Report from Dean Runyon. Now I'd like to segue and give you a brief update on our visitor lifecycle management program and how Welcome to Oregon Again campaign will add fuel to the VLM machine. The launch of the Welcome to Oregon Again campaign provides a much needed boost of new motivated travel planners into the VLM machine. Our major advertising campaigns focus on inspiring potential travelers and generating awareness of Oregon as a premier travel destination. These campaigns are top of our lead generation funnel and are designed to drive visitors to traveloregon.com. This is where VLM initiative comes to play, as we are now able to discern a visitor's travel preferences. Once visitors are in the VLM system, we're better able to tailor their experience and the content they receive across our marketing efforts, whether it be on the website or an email. Our goal is to continually improve the visitor experience, which is why we're excited to announce a major milestone. Dun, dun, dun. The VLM Nurture Stream. Within our marketing automation platform, we can categorize visitors into respective phases of the visitor lifecycle. This Nurture Stream logic sets the foundation for future personalization efforts. For every email subscriber, we're now able to tell what phase of the VLM lifecycle they're in. As of the start of June, we have 131,180 subscribers in the planning phase, 1,732 in the booking phase, and so on, as you can see from this graphic. The team has created specialized emails for each phase of the life cycle, providing content aimed at guiding visitors further down the travel decision-making funnel. For example, if a potential traveler is in the planning phase, we'll share content highlighting different lodging stories, so they will share their arrival date and we can move them into the booking phase of the life cycle. Next steps for the Nurture Stream are to build the triggering logic to deliver Nurture Stream emails. We aim to have these ready by end of July. We're excited to have the new Nurture Stream live for the launch of Welcome to Oregon Again, as the campaign will significantly expand the number of travelers coming into the VLM system. And we are still in the thick of creating the next iteration of Only Slightly Exaggerated, the Spirit of Oregon. And I want to share a peek behind the curtain by showing a few scene updates. What you see here is the aerial point of view from a kite festival at the coast. In this scene, you'll see details like the caterpillar from Oregon Slightly Exaggerated Season 1, Oregon State Bird, anyone?
Western Meadowlark.
Very good. Sky whales, of course, and callbacks to Oregon Slightly Exaggerated 1 and 2, as well as a kite by Portland-based artist AJ Fossick. While the campfire scene at Lapine State Park will be magical enough on its own, you'll see Oregonians like Ashton Eaton and Cheryl Strayed enjoying the fire. At the end of the evening, the campfire will be completely extinguished in the well-defined fire ring with a shovel and bucket next to the fire. We plan to use this scene to promote fire safety through the summer and fall and via future content. Oregon Shakespeare Fest actor Rainbow Dickerson takes the stage as Titania in Oregon Shakespeare Festival. We're thrilled to be able to promote the reopening of Oregon Shakespeare Festival with this art in the fall. And here you can see the work continue to evolve at a winery in the Willamette Valley. In this scene, we'll not only be able to talk about the Portland Trailblazers, but also new accessibility-focused itineraries developed by our partners at the Willamette Valley Visitors Association. The next steps for animation include final color, motion, and a custom musical score. This is a high-level timeline of our work through 2021 and into 2022. Welcome to Oregon will be followed by a period of stewardship messaging with a focus on wildfire awareness and prevention over the peak summer months. And then we plan to unveil Only Slightly Exaggerated in the fall, targeting early September. While the outlook for COVID is positive, we're going to remain flexible with our plans moving forward and continue to drive messaging around the 3 pillars of stewardship, safety, and business resiliency. We'll also be looking ahead at launching a new inspirational campaign in the spring of 22, keeping the Oregon Track and Field World Championships top of mind as a major opportunity in front of us. And with that, I will open it up to any questions for the commission.
Great job, Kevin. Thank you. Commissioners, anybody other than Kenji want to start with a question? Greg.
So Kevin, a lot has changed in the last year and a half in terms of media outlets and social media outlets. Has there been a clear winner that's going to stick around, or a change because we've had so much time at home to view this messaging?
Yeah, I mean, some of the latter part of what you said, those outlets where people have the time, the Netflixes, what is it called, OTT, over the top TV, smart TVs, you're getting more traffic, more eyeballs, more time in those spaces. There hasn't been a huge change in the landscape for media. The players that are there are still there. What we've found ourselves needing to do is adjust, those things that out of home, for example, even TV, we need to be able to change at a moment's notice. So those things, we're very adept at, all right, if we're going to be on TV, and that means we need to cancel within this time frame, or, for the last 16 months, we haven't been doing major creative campaigns because it's hard to make that investment knowing that you can even, 1, advertise, 2, can we be in those markets? So we've just had to pretty much stay in the digital space so we can pivot if need be and change the creative. I'm trying to think if there's any other, TikTok is on the market. I mean, there's some tactical channels that, we've been experimenting with, as we usually do with campaigns, TikTok, Nextdoor. But there hasn't been a shift really in the channels that are available to us. The other thing I mentioned before is, there's new ad units or outlets via Instagram and Facebook where we're able to tell deeper content, but that's just different ways we can tell the story within those channels.
Kenji?
May I?
Please. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, no worries. So the first question I had was surrounding OSE 3. And I remember we had just some discussions either the previous commission meeting or the meeting before that in terms of some of the artwork with social distancing and masking. Since we're delaying it to later this year, do you anticipate sort of more of a return to normalcy in terms of the artwork with crowds and such?
Yeah, we continue to talk about it internally. We are literally, if you really want to get into when it comes to the crowd scenes, I don't think we don't have them here, but you might be able to see it in the OSF one. We're literally talking about 50%, 65%, 80%. So I think from our last conversation where we were, we have scaled back, but we're not completely abandoning that because the data we're seeing still shows that people want reassurances from the travel destination that they're considering these thoughts. And so you will still see, still trying to strike that balance, especially with the events roundup in OSF. You want to show the vibrancy of the crowds, but at the same time, we're not jamming people in. So still trying to strike that balance.
Okay. Thank you. And then the other question I had was in the rebuild plan, one of the key concerns that came from a lot of stakeholders was the overburdened public resources. And I know, for example, state parks has had their revenue slashed and they're having issues. Have you been speaking with some of the natural resource management agencies in terms of the messaging appropriateness and what would be okay in that sort of spectrum of driving people to destinations?
Yeah, we have regular with the destination development team and the marketing team, and even in Sarah in public affairs we have regular conversations with those groups. And some of the key platforms or tactics that we have to support that would be our Take Care Out There messaging framework and the creative that we made with that. You heard me speak to the geofencing ads. I put it in with part of this as part of our campaign update, but that really sits within our always on. So that's not like just during the campaign, that's all of the time. So getting more sophisticated with our ability, when someone is driving in these spaces, to be able to share those messages. And we're getting that messaging directly from the land managers or the locals on the ground as far as, all right, it's going to be a busy weekend at Crater Lake. What do we need to be sharing with our audiences during those time? And then in a big picture, we're seeing a pretty significant shift in the investment from spring to fall. So this campaign for the springtime is, as you saw, 1.5 if you count the direct investment. What we're planning to buy media against for the fall is $3 million. So that's a pretty major shift in our big picture approach and where we're putting our resources.
Okay. And then I lied. That's not 2-3 questions. Have you been working closely with Travel Portland? Because of course they were impacted tremendously during COVID, and we saw those numbers. And have you put any plans into place to help them? Because I think Portland is coming back, and I think it'd be great if we could show them as much support as possible.
Yeah, and I think I've shared with you guys. So I have a weekly or bi-weekly meeting with Greg Newland, my counterpart at Travel Portland, just so we can stay lockstep with their efforts. I think we've shared with you the work that we've done in collaboration with Top Chef. We've also made Wyden and Kennedy, our media team and strategy team, available to Travel Portland because through their budget cuts, they were no longer able to retain Wyden and Kennedy. So we've made them available to Travel Portland to help with their plans. And I wish Greg was here. They've got some really exciting things that are like now, maybe today, that are launching. And I'm gonna leave it there because I don't want to steal their thunder. But we've been helping them with planning. We've been helping them with Top Chef, and we've made in that direct investment. We've helped support them over and above because of the impacts of the region.
Good, thank you. That's really useful information. So thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Kevin.
Any other questions from the commission?
I guess just one quick comment on how I've seen this work in action, which is just funny that I saw it in your slides up there. But I got a screenshot from the berries from my wife, sending that to myself and her mother saying, oh, it's time to go get strawberries now. And that drove them to go get berries out there. And I found out that, yes, later that was associated with Travel Oregon, but that's exactly how it works. And normally I don't find myself as susceptible to media, but clearly I am. So thank you, Kevin, for manipulating me.
And we know exactly where you are in your planning cycle too.
Yeah.
So.
What berries you're hungry for. We know all that.
I was just going to ask Kevin if you could go ahead and just live give us an example by pulling up Nigel's wife on the visitor lifecycle management nurture screen and show the little flashing dot.
You probably know where I'm going next more so than I do.
We have many conversations of using technology purely for good because in the marketing world, the technology that is available to us, you can get pretty creepy pretty fast. And so, at the end of the day, we just want to be able to support visitors and give them the information they need and avoid being creepy as at all costs.
And on that note, can I just compliment you on the Welcome Back Oregon Again campaign? I love it because it is real. And I think it really allows people to feel comfortable about going ahead and getting out again. And just really well done, nice and subtle and not overwhelming and just beautifully executed. So compliments on that.
Thank you. And we're very fortunate because we all know that that was created a year ago. And my stress for the last 16 months is the investment made there. You never know whether, the world is changing as fast as it is. Will it be relevant? Will it still make sense? And I think it's a testament to our work with Wyden and Kennedy. A little bit of luck, but they also can see around the corner and help us with our creative that's going to stand the test of time, whether it's, think of the body of work we've created. And so it doesn't necessarily surprise me. I'm happy, but it doesn't surprise me that this thing was able to stand on its own a year later and still be relevant with our visitors.
Any other questions? All right. Well, if not, this global marketing update was brought to you by Not Too Creepy Kevin Wright. There's a new KPI in there somewhere, Kevin, I think. The creepy index. So anyway, all right, commissioners, our next update is regarding the incredible work that's gone on in our competitive and recovery grant programs. It's my pleasure to turn this segment of the program over to Michelle Woodard, who is our grants program manager, who will provide us with an update on the grants that have been awarded so far this spring. Michelle, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Todd. Great to be there virtually with you folks. I feel like I'm on the big Jumbotron for you. So good morning, commissioners. As Todd said, I'm Michelle Woodard, grants manager here at Tribal Oregon. I hope you're enjoying being able to greet one another in person. I'm here today to provide an update on the recently awarded competitive and recovery grants. All right, so here's an overview of the program. The application was open for 17 days. And as you can see, the turnaround time from applications closing to grant funds being awarded was a month. This fast turnaround was intentional. We wanted to get funds out the door and into awardee hands as soon as possible, making an immediate impact in helping folks be ready and having things in place as the weather starts to warm. The grant dollars were not used in supporting marketing expenses. These were hard costs associated with infrastructure to create or provide a COVID-appropriate visitor experience. There were 4 project categories eligible: outdoor recreation and business district Main Street, which aligned with the need that we saw surfacing from Tribal Oregon's Destination Ready program. The 2 additional categories were for ticketed paid events and attractions. Many of these entities were closed all year or weren't in operations during 2020. And then we have our tour operators, guides, and outfitters. You can see the numbers on the screen. So 419 applications with over $18.5 million requested. Back a little bit, there you go. As you know, 60 projects were awarded at just over $2.4 million. I pulled just a couple specifics around where the type of funding that was awarded was, and there's a few more details in the strategic plan progress report. I think the most telling stat, however, is the last bullet. Only 14% of all applications received funding. There are a lot of people looking for dollars. I want to thank the commission, back a slide. There we go. I want to thank the commission for approving the budget adjustment to allocate an additional $1.3 million to go towards grant funding in this cycle. Again, 14% of all applicants were funded. Imagine if you hadn't allocated more money into this grants program. It's always hard when you see a group of really great projects that receive funds, and yet you know it's just touching the surface of a lot of good and impactful projects across the state. And all of these projects have a story. Not just the 60 awarded, but all 419. I'm going to touch briefly on 4 awardees. I randomly chose these when preparing this presentation, and I was struck by how these stories were so much more than just tourism. What I love about these projects, or more specifically, what I love about these entities, is the connection to Tribal Oregon's vision. A better life for all Oregonians through strong, sustainable, local communities that welcome a diversity of explorers. Here's our first story, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. OSF received funding for HVAC improvements to the Allen Elizabethan Theater indoor spaces. So yes, the outdoor theater's indoor space. Specifically, improvements to its restrooms and its control booths, and some of those booths are where closed captioners and audio describers do their work to increase accessibilities for those attending the plays. Now, OSF has received a significant amount of grants, but this was the first grant they had ever applied for from Tribal Oregon. Some of their team reached out to discuss what might be a good fit for this program, and their main question was around being able to support their staff and making sure that their staff felt safe. Without staff, the show can't go on. Was it okay to ask for funds for control booths or for the box office? For places where visitors weren't going to be. In 2019, OSF had a regional economic impact of over $120 million. They have over 600 employees, a third of which are graduates of my alma mater, Southern Oregon University. Also in 2019, 80% of their productions were written or directed by women and/or Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and 65% of their 90-person acting company was BIPOC. In addition to their 600 employees, they have 700 volunteers. Ashland isn't Ashland without OSF. Last September, when the Alameda fire destroyed 2,500 residential structures and approximately 400 businesses, OSF immediately opened up a donation center for food, housing, supplies, and cash support for over 350 families. They housed 70 families in OSF-owned apartments and raised approximately $175,000 for direct relief to fire victims. Community. Not only Ashland, OSF impacts and supports communities across the Rogue Valley. Next, we have the Corvallis Fall Festival. This event didn't take place in 2020, and all of its revenue comes from booth fees and sponsorships. Without support of these grant dollars to help make the 2021 festival possible, they were concerned the festival wouldn't see its 48th year. Grant dollars will cover the cost of hand sanitizers and cleaning supplies, as well as double the number of hand washing stations and increase their bathroom facilities by 25%. This free event will showcase 180 of the region's artists. In addition to arts and craft booths, Benton County nonprofits raise funds through food booths, where they are often partnering with local restaurants. The festival's mission is to sustain local arts and crafts while supporting and showcasing the Corvallis community. In a letter of support, the Corvallis mayor emphasized the impact and importance of this event to the community 5 times. 5 times he called out the importance to the community. I'll leave you with this quote. The Corvallis Fall Festival reflects our community's ethos, attracts visitors and economic opportunity to the area, and unites our community and fellow Oregonians in celebration of the arts. I didn't know about Hacienda Community Development Corporation before this grant application. Hacienda's Portland Mercado is Portland's only Latinx public market and one of the city's most visible hubs of Latinx culture, food, art, and entrepreneurship. The Mercado works to break barriers for Latinx entrepreneurs and build a more equitable food and business landscape. Their ultimate goal is building wealth and assets in a historically marginalized community. The Portland Mercado is home to 9 food carts and 8 indoor businesses that participate in Hacienda's Small Business Incubator Program. The Mercado also houses a 24/7 accessible nonprofit commercial kitchen, which serves over 70 entrepreneurs in the beginning stages of their food businesses. The pandemic hit this community of small businesses extremely hard. Hacienda's team of business advisors worked diligently to provide support through technical assistance, access to grant funding, and at one point partnered with Business Oregon in serving as a hub to distribute PPE to the local business community. Tribal Oregon's grant funds will help install a permanent cover over the eating areas, repave the worn parking lots, and add additional signage as the Mercado looks to safely reopen. The Mercado was started through a grassroots community-driven effort. They hold events on site to encourage diversity and foster interaction from all communities. I love this statement from Hacienda. We built the Portland Mercado because we believe that entrepreneurship will change the world and unite our cultural communities. We believe that small businesses and culture are the cornerstone of an integrated and equitable city. The final story is Wildlife Safari. When they applied for the grant, they were different from most applicants. A lot of attractions were closed in 2020. Not Wildlife Safari. They normally see about 200,000 visitors, and they had 309,000 go through their drive-through safari. And I feel like I can speak for parents out there. Wildlife Safari was a blessing during the pandemic for those with children. Wildlife Safari opened in 1972, and it isn't just a drive-through animal park. Wildlife Safari has one of the top cheetah breeding research centers on Earth and is the #1 cheetah breeding facility outside of Africa. Scores of students enter Wildlife Safari's internship programs each year, and an international veterinary medicine program resides on the safari grounds. The rural community of Winston and surrounding Douglas County communities benefit directly from Wildlife Safari's education programs. Hundreds of young students are reached each year through educational training and science-based classes, many of which take place in the Safari Dome. Some high school students even attend ecology, English, and mathematics classes on site. Speaking of the Safari Dome, grant funds will be used to repair the aging dome and expand its size to be able to safely hold even more educational-based functions, animal programming, and gamekeeper chats. The Safari Dome is the main facility for youth camps and serves as a fun zone for terminally ill children and their families during the free Dream Night at the Zoo event. Another event held in the Dome is Celebrate Children, a free admission day focused on literacy, with many social service agencies represented to offer support. Zoos, Booze, and Brews is an adult Halloween event that highlights local breweries. And Breakfast with Santa is a beloved family tradition at the park that regularly sells out, with the Safari Dome being used for holiday pictures with ambassador cheetahs. The Safari Dome is a key component of the Safari Village, where over 500 animals are on display. For over 20 years, Wildlife Safari has been committed to providing this attraction for free to its community, giving low-income families a place to come and be inspired by natural resources and wildlife. These grant dollars help lift entities that are doing great things to strengthen their community and welcome a diversity of visitors. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Michelle. I think it goes without saying, commissioners, but I'm going to say it anyway, that I think it's obvious from the presentation, and you've heard Michelle present to you before, the skill and the talent to manage a robust grant program like this, Michelle possesses. But I think equally as important, she has the heart for this program. She loves this program. She loves the proponents. One of the downsides of not being together in the office, Michelle and I had adjacent offices to one another in the Salem office. And if she would get an email from somebody that maybe got a grant that was like $1,092.47, and sometimes they're the ones that are the most grateful, and she would run over and show me, you got to see this email that I just got from, she has a real heart for this program, and the industry, not just Travel Oregon, but the industry is well served by Michelle's contribution to and management of our grant program. So I just had to say that before I opened it up for questions. But at this point, commissioners, do you have any questions for Michelle about her presentation?
I might begin with a comment at the risk of being redundant, Todd, but Michelle, when I think of how emotionally resonant stories like these are for us, for the audience who gets to hear about this, and when I think of the significance with which the grant program strikes us, I can't imagine what a wrung out rag of an emotional, what you put yourself through, what you knowingly and willingly put yourself through in the pursuit of working through this grant process, in educating grant applicants, in working not only with the recipients, but people who are struggling and for whom you might seem like one of their last possible threads. You're doing something that is so much more profound than just the benefits to the community and to the bottom lines of individual award recipients. You really are giving hope and inspiration far beyond the meager sum of dollars that you get to dole out. It's got to take miles off of you. It's got to take years off of your life sometimes. And for what you are doing for Oregonians and for our industry, and directly and indirectly for all of us, just thank you so much.
Well, first, thank you, Todd, for the kind words, and same, Chair Youngblood, thank you for the kind words. I really do think that the hard part is, hey, there were 419 people that applied that were in need, and these are good projects. And so when you see 359 that don't get funded, and I think that's the challenging landscape of it, is knowing that, hey, there are a lot of great things that are happening around here, and it's great to have these stories and be able to share them. And I mean, I wish there was more time to share more of these stories, because really, I mean, that's what makes Oregon Oregon. And that's the cool thing about this position, is seeing all of these great things that are happening across the state. And yes, I wish we could fund every project that applied for funding through us, but hopefully more funding will be available through different avenues for a lot of these folks. And I think there will be. So thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Any other questions or comments for Michelle at this time? If not, Michelle, I'll ask if you'll introduce our next presenter as well, please.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much, Commission. I'd like to introduce the next presentation, which is a competitive large grants update. So this grant was awarded in December of 2017. And you last heard from the team at Oregon 21 when we gathered in Independence back in February of 2020. So I know this was mentioned earlier, but there's been a few things that have happened since that last commission meeting. So today it's my pleasure to introduce the team from Oregon 21. Looks like Niels is there, yes, with the group. Okay, so we have Niels DeVos, Sarah Massey, and Sasha Spencer Atwood, who are joining us to give us an update on what Oregon 22 has been working on for the past 15 months or so.
Great, Michelle, thank you very much indeed. And thanks everyone for your ongoing support, particularly through the delay, which obviously caused some great challenges for everyone, but required a renegotiation of that large grant that you kindly awarded us to make it run through that extra 12 months. So that was really, really helpful. So thank you for all your support in that process. One thing I should just say is we managed to make sure that the delay didn't actually increase anyone's costs by effectively getting World Athletics to reduce some of our obligations on them. So we've kept the budget the same as it always was, which is great news for everybody. And we've used that extra year, I think, to great effect to really polish our plans and get ourselves in a really good place to go now with, I think, 395 days today. We launched our tickets on sale today, so it's a pretty momentous occasion. And it will be a massive opportunity for the state of Oregon. We heard Kevin talking about the only slightly exaggerated campaign earlier. I think it's probably only a slight exaggeration to say this could be the biggest global profile that the state has enjoyed for decades past and decades into the future. If I look at some of the markets that were mentioned just in the last hour or so while we've been listening in, Jeff Fletcher was talking about Japan. Clearly the TBS broadcasters from Japan will be the biggest international broadcaster here. Kevin talked about the UK and Germany being two European markets. They are the two single biggest European broadcasters that will be coming over. And China, representing the Far East, will also have an enormous broadcast contingent here. Essentially, the shorthand for this, and you've all heard me say this before, is the opportunity for the state is this is a global TV advertisement over 10 days with over 6 billion eyeballs. And our job is to make sure that within staging the event, we can promote the state as well as we can. Your job, we hope, is to make the most of that opportunity in everything that you do and everything you communicate. Maybe we'll see an only slightly exaggerated treatment with the World Championships in it when the time comes. But it's a big opportunity for all of us. We're delighted to be able to be part of it. And with that, I'll hand over to my colleagues, Sarah Massey, who's our CEO, and Sasha Spencer-Atwood, who is queen of many things, but athlete and visitor experience is key to her role here. So, Sasha, I think you're going to kick off for us.
I'll kick off. Hi, everybody, and thanks for listening and joining us. And we're very happy to be talking about a bit of an update, as Michelle said, over the last 15 months. I think really, obviously the world of sport is in a very different place. As everybody said, we became Oregon 22. And I think really with that, we took that opportunity to really relook at the event, relook at some of our aspects of planning, and really look at, producing the brand. Obviously, we need to do the brand, and also looking at putting in place a really robust strategy. We knew that we would need that in place to tackle all the many challenges we've had with our partners and our stakeholders as well over the last 12 months. I think as Sasha will come on to talk about how we've engaged and worked with our stakeholders and partners, this really is and has become more so a real collective effort for everybody in order to achieve our objectives. And so much of what's happened in the last 12 months has meant that we are now really mindful of this kind of shift in momentum to being incredibly digital and incredibly diverse in everything that we're doing. So the first thing that we did back in November was we launched our new brand along with the new strategy. We're going to try and show you a video. I know that sometimes it doesn't always work very well over Zoom, so we'll try.
My journey began in Oregon,
where athletics is woven into
Sarah, it looks like your presentation is in the notes mode. So I wonder if you moved it out of notes, if we would hear the volume better.
my career has taken me
around the world.
But I've always come home to Hayward Field. It's the home of Track and Field USA.
A glorious, legendary venue reimagined by athletes for athletes.
A stadium whose heart beats for track and field.
A stadium that will soon be the home of the 2022 World Athletics Championships. "2,000 athletes,
from more than 200 nations
and thousands of fans from around the globe
are coming for a once-in-a-lifetime experience for the first time on U.S. soil.
The world's greatest track and field stars are here bound.
For world records,
For the fans,
for gold and glory,
and for the world's most prestigious track and field event.
see you at our home in 2022.
Have we lost them? Have we dropped them? Did we lose Michelle also? Michelle is still on. Okay. Okay. Michelle, it sounds like we've lost our connection with our.
Oh, looks like they're coming. It looks like they're coming.
I was just going to
back.
ask, we can give them a second to see if we can get them logged back in and continue on.
Yeah, it looks like they're coming back. I can see them on my. Yes. Okay. And I think
technical challenges. Apologies.
no problem. I think if I don't get muted right here, I think one of the things we noticed, Sarah, was that the slides were in notes view. So I wonder if they are, when you start the presentation, if we have it in just the presentation view, if that might help. So.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are you still seeing the notes view, Michelle?
I am. I'm still seeing the notes view.
Just go into the PowerPoint and see what happens there. Just lose the video because I've seen that now.
Yes.
So let's find out what we can see.
What can you see now, Michelle?
I'm still seeing your notes view. I think maybe I'm getting a note from someone. Click on the display setting at the top of the screen. There you go. And then swap to presenter view. There you go. See if that works.
Better? Is that better?
There, yes, perfect.
Sorry, it's funny because we use Teams, not Zoom. So we tried it out. We did some testing this morning, but we're novice Zoomers. We're team experts. So apologies for that.
No, not a problem at all.
I don't know whether you saw any of the video, but I mean, we'll send it through with the presentation so that you've got it to have a look at anyway.
That sounds great. Thank you.
It's an awesome video that kind of really kind of captures the mood and some of the brand work that we've been doing. So I think one of the key things was, writing and being very clear on what our strategy is for the event. And we made it simple. We've got an ambition, we've got some goals, we have some 6 strategic initiatives, which we will talk you through one by one, just to show what we've been doing across those 6 initiatives. And everything that we do is with a world mindset. So our powerful ambition really is to be the best of all worlds. So best of all worlds for fans, for athletes, and all constituents and visitors who will celebrate and take part and engage with the event. And really the overriding vision that we're all working towards is the elevation of the sport of track and field and the state of Oregon globally. So as Neil's talked about at the beginning, this is what we are here for, and that's what we're aiming to achieve. And then our big goals, kind of honing it down into some of the specifics that we will be working around, is to organise an unmissable World Championships, to optimise our resources and partnerships, to maximise that visibility and digital engagement for everybody, how important our digital fans have become over the last 12 months, And then it's all about prioritizing and being united in diversity. And our 6 strategic initiatives which work towards that are up here. I'll give you a kind of a very brief overview of each one. And then, as I said, we'll dive a bit deeper into each individual initiative as we go through. So our strong brand is all about building a brand and imagery that resonates globally and is attractive globally, both for fans who are in the stadium and fans who might be engaging digitally around the world. We want to drive change. So Sasha will talk very much about how we want to be an inspiring leader and a voice for igniting that long-lasting change. And that's both in mindset and in the behavior that we set ourselves as we go through the event. Our unique experiences, I think we probably talked about this in one of the previous presentations, about making sure that we're honing in and giving each individual constituent group an unmissable experience, providing them with operational excellence, but also really trying to bring in the whole heart and home that's unique to Oregon 22 and the heart and home of track and field at Hayward Field here in the US. We want to make sure that we're providing a platform to engage all our partners. So I think this is one of the really key things that we've worked on over the last 12 months is how we work individually with our partners and stakeholders so that they can achieve their objectives from the platform that we are providing for the overall success of the championships. We're obviously putting together a high-performing team. Obviously, that wasn't growing during the 12 to 15 months during the pandemic, but obviously now we're starting to ramp up with our staff and making sure that everything that we do is upholding the values that we very clearly set ourselves and conducting our actions through, really robust business practice, but optimizing resources with due diligence and governance. And then from a digital perspective, making sure that everything that we're doing is with a digital lens, both in our activities to enhance our business practices internally, but also how we engage all of our fans and also stakeholders externally. And the values that we have as an organisation, which we call our world mindset, are to make sure that we're constantly celebrating that world diversity, that everything we do is all about being athlete inspired and putting them at the heart of everything that we do. It's about being resourceful and sustainable, both with our resources and also from a cost perspective. And it's making sure that everything, again, is about being progressive. How can we do it better, both through our design process and also our delivery process? So short summary of our strategy. And as we said, we organise all of the work that we do according to our strategic initiatives. And so what we thought we'd do was talk a little bit about the progress we've made in each of these different areas. Probably the key thing that's different than you've seen before is the brand. And that was developed over the course of that last 12 months. It's taken from being inspired by Hayward Field, and you'll see on the left-hand side, and we call them affectionately the ribs inside our logo. The logo has to follow the rules and shape of World Athletics with their new branding, and then we get the chance to brand the inside. But we've taken a very bold step with our bold colours, and you'll see that each of those different colours actually represent something about the brand. And this, I guess, is what becomes the cornerstone of everything that we do and everything that we deliver is around these 4 things which Oregon 22 now stands for. So we kind of start right at our rib on the right-hand side, which is the smallest rib. It's closest to that beating heart of track and field, the heart and home of track and field within the USA. And that's there to represent our volunteers, our athletes, and everybody competing within the venue. As we move outwards, we go to the green of Oregon, of the city of Eugene, of the university. And this is all about celebrating the eco-conscious nature of the state and the natural resources that it has. Our blue is all about highlighting the nation. It's all about the sport. It's all about the youth that are the actual future of the sport of track and field. And it's also about celebrating Team USA, who are the #1 team across the championships with all the winning of their gold medals. And then on the left-hand side, that kind of purple rib on the far left-hand side represents the world. It represents the diversity of our world audience and celebrates everything that has to offer. And the colour is all about the kind of speaking to the prestige of the event and the quality of the athletes that will attend. As Neil said, we've started the process, the press release that went out this morning about announcing that the date that tickets will go on sale. So mark your calendars, 15th of July, the public sale will open. So really exciting milestone to meet to get that promotion up and running. And it really is, since the brand launch last year, is really the first time that we've become very active and launched kind of some of the things that are about to happen. We have a full campaign calendar of all the other campaigns that will be coming up over the next 12 months, which we will talk to you about in a later presentation. But really, yeah, this is the kickoff to everything that we will be promoting with our ticket sales. Very exciting. So I'm going to hand over to Sasha to talk through the rest of our initiatives, so the remaining 5 initiatives which we have set.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks to all of you. It's appropriate today that we begin with engaging partners because Teresa and her team have just been tremendous partners as we have tried to forge ahead. We appreciate the position that you've been in statewide, leading in the ways that you do and just how challenging it's been. So that engagement has been critical for us as well. Here's just an overview of our partners. Again, each of whom we've had the opportunity to develop regular routine meetings with. One of the silver linings of the pandemic has just been the availability and the collaborative opportunities, both to allow partners to reassess what their objectives might be in the current climate, but also for us to examine opportunities for synergy and chances to work together. So we've engaged regularly with the University of Oregon, Eugene and Springfield, also the Chambers of Commerce in each of these areas and some other local community groups. So we have taken the opportunity really to strengthen those relationships as we move forward into kind of more programming and operational endeavors together. Drive Change, as Sarah said, is our very intentional effort to ensure that as we continue to prepare the event, we're doing so through a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the sustainability that's so intrinsic to us as a state, and also it's something we want to be reflected across the event. So we undertook developing a significant DE&I strategy that sits on its own outside of the place where it typically might within the World Athletics structure. We think it's important, and we think that we really have an opportunity as a global event to make an impact in this area. It runs throughout each and every, even from an operational standpoint, perspective that we take. We're always asking each other and asking ourselves what we can do to make sure that we are not only incorporating, but enhancing opportunities in the DE&I space through the work that we're doing. And we partnered with the Council for Responsible Sport and World Athletics to pursue the highest classification for international sporting event. It's the opportunity not only for us as an event to be recognized and run as a sustainable event, but also again to expose a global audience to the way that we do things in Oregon and the fact that you really can run a fantastic event that also is noted for its sustainability. Another thing we've done is continue to talk about how we make this a statewide event, and a couple of ways that we are working to do that is through our youth education program. We're in the process of presenting and getting school districts around the state involved and on board to assist with that. We have conversations with all of the RDMOs around ways in which their communities and schools can get involved with that. The Oregon Heritage Trail project is something that that we've been partnered with Travel County. Travel Portland has also been very helpful, and Billy Mosier and the work that she's doing. But having heritage sites across the state to act as kind of a trail for people to follow, recognizing notable athletes who have lived or competed or have connections with those places, and leading up to culminating with the activation that will be held by World Athletics here in Eugene during the event. 214 Rundown program is our kind of youth and community activation program, where we're inviting people to join in on participating in runs of varying lengths that will represent each of the 214 member federations. We're also partnering really closely with the City of Eugene. We recognize that this is going to be an invitation to bring people together again. We are operating with the optimism of being able to hold celebrations like the ones represented in these images and really make this a bright spot as people look towards how they will spend their summer in 2022. We have developed alongside the City of Eugene a city activation plan that has both a kind of a business and commerce element. It is based on the goals and objectives that the City of Eugene has set. And so we've had an opportunity to go into more detail with that, with Carrie Westland from Tribal Acknowledgement and Teresa and the team. But it also has a community element that's really aimed at not only welcoming everyone in the community to celebrate World Championships Oregon 22, but also inviting the community to celebrate diverse members and communities within Oregon and Lane County so that everyone feels like they are invited and a part of this. Another way in which we are addressing this one is by taking a look at who the fans are and really delivering to them. So we recognize that we've got that at some point throughout a journey, which we'll talk a little bit about, we have people who are fans who will attend the event within the stadium. We have fans who will attend the non-ticketed events going on around the community. And then we have a set of global fans who will attend and consume the event either through broadcast or through our digital mediums. And at any point in their journey, a fan might fall into each one of these categories, right? So we're making sure that we're developing an experience that speaks to all of the different consumers that we are inviting to celebrate the championships alongside us. That speaks to the experiences. As we've mentioned before, we are really organizing this event through the lens of an experience journey as opposed to kind of checking particular boxes of functions and tasks that need to be performed, taking a look at the experience of the constituents who are going to come here and planning along those lines. So this roughly is kind of the journey that we have mapped out. We're in this engagement phase, right? You just saw the imagery for the announcement that tickets will go on sale. And our planning is really developed to speak to each one of the steps in this phase. We've identified 6 experiences and main constituent groups in athletes and teams, fans, the broadcast experience, media, and the World Athletics family. The other thing that we've done in order to ensure that we know the constituents that we're speaking to is engaged a data insights expert who helps us identify who these people are, when they're likely to get here, what the peaks and valleys of that travel and engagement might be, so that we're operating and developing plans off of real-time information and not just estimates. The other big development has been the Oregon 22 competition schedule. You see a glimpse of it right here. It will be, it is available in greater detail. But this was a big hallmark, and Chair Sunils for really leading on this because it got tons of engagement and was really lauded by the track and field community, both fans, spectators, and athletes, as being really one of the best, most concise, thoughtful competition schedules that has been put out there, ensuring that fans will be able to engage in the events that they're excited to see and that athletes get to perform some of those impressive doubles that we're excited to see also. We've made some strides in growing our dynamic team as well. So we're here in phase 2 of the planning continuum, scope and plan. Right there. Some of the developments have been just staffing, as Sarah mentioned. We were on a kind of a hold during the pandemic, but we've increased our full-time staff members to 12. And I mentioned before in previous meetings that we're really looking at the development of this team in an out of the box kind of way. Because we have so many resources at the University of Oregon and the city of Eugene and around the region really who are subject matter experts, rather than bringing on people who are dedicating themselves to only working on behalf of our event, we're being resourceful and making use of that expertise that exists in the community around us and inviting them to be extended members of our team. And that's represented by those 25 additional staff members. We're also in the process of continuing to recruit. We're recruiting roles within the LOC, but also beginning to imagine what the recruiting of volunteers will look like throughout the state. So there's jobs being posted regularly on the website, and we look forward to continuing to apprise Teresa and her team of updates as those things do develop. Digital transformation is another way in which we plan to move the event forward. I mentioned a moment ago that we're working with a data insight expert to really optimize the numbers. So we've currently launched the website as well as social media channels. Here's a representation of a few of those. And we're getting lots of really good engagement. We're looking forward to events coming up, such as the Olympic trials, that will kind of put track and field top of mind for more and more people, working to not only highlight things that are going on within the sport, but also just things that are important to the community. I'm going to pass it back to Sarah for a few more updates.
Thanks, Sasha. I realise that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour throughout the strategic initiatives, but I think, as you can see, that obviously we've had that 12 months and 15 months since the last update, so there's really been quite a lot to tell. Just a couple of things that I know are important that we've been working through with the team. Just the tour operators and fan clubs, we reached out to those different groups about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We collated the lists of different contacts that had come through either to Tribal Oregon or to Tribal County or from World Athletics with the usual fan clubs and tour operators that would bring fans. So we reached out to them about a pre-order for tickets. I mean, clearly that's quite difficult for them at the moment with a lot of people not being able to travel into the US, but even they're saying there's a huge amount of appetite for people, once the restrictions are lowered, to be able to buy tickets for a big event and for them to get out and about and see different countries. So again, as I say, it's difficult for them to at the moment, but they are optimistic that there will be fans coming and booking with them. Training camps, again, we continue to work with Tribal Oregon on the collation of the training camp different hosts around the state that have indicated interest in hosting. And we will continue to work with the federations to see their interest in coming to training camps. I mean, at the moment, obviously, again, that's not something they're immediately going ahead and booking straight away. I think they need to get through Tokyo. We will have many of the team leaders here for a site visit in September. We're doing a joint virtual and in-person event. So again, we will start to pick up those conversations directly with federations and team leaders as we head into September this year. Volunteer recruitment, Sasha just mentioned previously, that recruitment will start around September. So again, going statewide, not just locally, to recruit that diverse population of volunteers for the event. I just wanted to mention accommodation contracts because we have obviously secured the accommodation that's needed within the Eugene Springfield area for the obligations that we have for media and broadcasters and World Athletics family. And we're working very closely with Tribal County and Meg, particularly in terms of the tour operator accommodation, to make sure that any information available for spectators' accommodation is up and available on the special portal that they are building. I mentioned just here the World Broadcasters meeting because clearly that's an important part and important conversations that were started with the production team when they were here, met with Tribal Oregon representatives back in January 2020. Those conversations have been started up again, and that will be a key date. We've spoken to the internal team about that already, about being present at that meeting, starting to talk to broadcasters and producing B-roll and other footage that they can then incorporate into their programming. One thing which again has been signed and agreed since the last update is the Travel Oregon as the host state kind of become one of the official partners and official sponsors, clearly an important stakeholder, but also now the right to use the logo, right to use this lockup on your promotional material and really gain that exposure for State and Oregon 22 that Neil's talked about. So I put these back up here again. I know we've actually talked about these before, but just to remind you about this is the opportunity for the global advertisement for Oregon, both through the name Oregon 22 as the event. As we mentioned, graphics, the B-roll, the beauty shots, and all the time that the event is mentioned, we obviously mention Oregon 22, and so does everybody in its official title. And then in particular on the right-hand side, you'll see that I mentioned before the official title is host city and partner of World Athletics. Then the right to use the logo and promo materials on boards and official collateral and materials and all the official partner recognition that will be afforded to all the sponsors and partners of the event. And I just note this down here again, that we talked last time about, and this is the data from London, that the expected equivalent media buy is over $100 million. And that's based on what happened in London and the exposure that London got as the name London and London 2017. And at the top 3 markets that went into the evaluation of that are across the UK, China, and Japan. I'm not sure whether it's a good idea to tempt fate and play this very short video at the end. We'll try and redeem ourselves from the last time. But this was a video which is, this just shows what it means to athletes to come to Hayward Field, to come to Eugene and compete. We literally asked them to do some small pieces to camera about their experiences in Hayward Field, what had happened when they participated here in the past. And the response from the athletes was amazing. They all did it, all sent in some little video pieces. And this is the compilation. You may have seen this already on social media that we put out in November of essentially, what it means to them to come to Hayward.
This is my home track.
This is the place where I'm training.
We are at Filter Stadium, a beautiful place to train.
I don't get to have some big track meets in the US a lot. So when I do hear that we're going to have world champs at Hayward, it's like, yes.
One word that describes Hayward Field, it'd be passion.
Magical. Electrified.
I dream of holding an American flag over my shoulders on US soil.
I'm looking forward to being back there again for the World Championship in 2022.
I am already looking forward to the World Championships in Eugene, Oregon.
The home. Eugene 2022.
And obviously in 2022, we're going to be there.
God, so young.
Thank you. We open it up for questions.
Well, Neil, Sarah, Sasha, thank you so much for your presentation. Commissioners, questions for the Oregon 22 team? Could you?
Sure. Just wonderful to see the progress. Over the past year, I had questions about what progress was being made. And just getting this update was fantastic, and just seeing how everything is coming together. So it gives me full confidence, and it reassures me in terms of what's coming, and gets me excited in terms of what's coming in 2022, and seeing Eugene just blow up with lots of people coming here and spending their money. So I'm very excited.
Bravo. Other questions or comments from members of the commission?
I do have one. Of course, this is not just a Eugene event, it's a statewide event with lodging challenges and transportation challenges throughout the state. I'm curious about what is taking place to make it possible for people to move from remote places of accommodation to the event, how some of those logistics are coming together, or perhaps not.
I'd say one thing, thank you, Commissioner, for the question. One of the benefits of the timetable we've designed was to try and make sure that that actually maximised the ability for people to travel in and out of Eugene whilst being here specifically for this event. So 2 points. One, on many of the days, there is no daytime session, which traditionally there has been. So people can spend their days seeing the state and still get into Eugene for the evening session. And the sessions have been brought forward. So the time slot for an evening session is 6 to 8 p.m, which again leaves people time to, if they are choosing to hotel on the coast or even up in Portland, to do that as part of the travel run, everyone having to stay in Eugene. That's quite a difficult thing to pull off because it had to fit in with broadcast, but we think it's the most beneficial way of allowing particularly international visitors, and please God, they're all allowed in at that stage, to make the most of seeing the city, because one of the challenges, seeing the state rather than just the city. So that's been really, I think, really beneficial in enabling that to happen.
And I think one of the key things that we will do once we have sold the tickets and have the ticket holders' information is we will be reaching out to them to talk about accommodation and trying to facilitate transport, letting them know of all of the different, the extensive park and ride systems that we will have throughout the competition, and helping them with that journey. And Travel County are working, as I mentioned, hand in hand with us to try and identify not just hotel accommodation, but other different types of accommodation that spectators can take advantage of. But we understand and we totally appreciate that the challenge of moving everybody around and making sure that's facilitated.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
If I could make one other observation, sorry, apologies for jumping in, about overseas visitors. This is a programme where the benefit will probably be felt as much in the years beyond as during the event itself. So if you take, for example, somewhere like Japan, there'll be a lot of reference to Oregon during the Olympics because it's the next big event. So as athletes finish, they'll be asked, what do you feel about the World Championships going into Oregon? Some will come for the event for sure, but others will then have that reinforced through the, effectively 12 months later, another big reference to Oregon in their marketplace. If you think about UK and Germany, what's very interesting is both of those are hosting major sports events right on the back of Oregon 22. So you've got the Commonwealth Games happening in Birmingham, UK, and you've got the European Games happening in Munich, Germany. And every single athlete that goes into those nations, and they're representing nations from around the world, will be talking about Oregon. It also means those markets focus on Oregon more than they were. So this kind of multiplier effect of a sports event is really important. That we won't really be able to gauge the impact on visitor flows until we're probably 2 or 3 years down the line, and even into Paris 24. That's the sort of time frame where Oregon will be continually referenced in the sporting context and will continue to gain benefit. So again, worth you all being aware of that.
Yeah, thank you, Niels. That's a great point. It's a question that had come up earlier.
Nope, we've lost you.
The impacts of Oregon 22, and the fact that it's not only the impacts of the event itself, but it's the notoriety leading up to it, and then of course that halo effect that will continue afterwards, and to see that increased drive for demand as a result of it. So it's a great point.
And top 2 markets I didn't mention there as well, which I think are very important. Japan coming back into that, they are looking to bid for this event in 2025. And if that's the case, then the Japanese impact of Oregon 22 will stretch right through to 25. And the other key bidder, and someone very senior from there will be out in Eugene for the trials next week, is Singapore, which again is within one of your key markets. So those are the kind of places that are bidding to be a future host of this event, which again gives people an idea of the global scale and the uniqueness for a town and a state like Oregon to have the opportunity to play at those international levels is magnificent, and it's what gets us massively excited about the opportunity.
Niels, we're going to make an Oregonian out of you yet.
No, you already have.
Todd?
No, very, very well said. Oh, I'm sorry, Kenji, you had a question?
I did have one follow-up question.
Yeah.
You might have already started doing this, but I'm wondering what have you done to help prepare the community, especially the Eugene area, for the scope of this event? Because I'm imagining there's a lot of people not in the community who don't realize how big of an event and how it could impact their daily lives. So I was just wondering if you started that outreach process or that educational process.
So we're partnering with the City of Eugene to undertake just that. You know, we're kind of starting close in and moving out as we go. We want to make sure that from a planning perspective, we're working with the appropriate people within the city on permitting and all of the real city impacts, so that internally we have an idea of what those might be. And as we learn those things, we're messaging out. So from a planning perspective, we're doing that. But we're also, just from a promotional perspective, we're looking to create excitement and enthusiasm about the event, and to invite community members to think about ways that they can be planning and preparing and be involved, not just through the event directly, but just through their neighborhoods and neighborhood associations, of course through businesses, but also through the outreach to cultural communities. So we're trying to really convey the scope and scale of the event along a number of different channels, and beginning to make some real progress there.
Good, thank you.
Well, Neil, Sarah, Sasha, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day to join us here and provide us with this update. It's a significant event. It's going to have long-ranging impacts for travel and tourism in the state of Oregon, for visitors from around the world. And we're thrilled to be your partners and appreciate your time here today. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our reports for this morning, and I will turn the meeting back over to you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And commissioners, wow. What a refreshing opportunity for us to be back together and just receive reports and share in commission business together today. It was exciting and wonderful to get to spend time with each of you. And looking forward to October, when we get to spend time with Commissioners DeNovo and Shepherd and Anway as well. Do any of you have additional thoughts or comments today? Any announcements that you'd like to share before we wrap up? Yes, sir.
I applaud the efforts of Tribal Oregon, specifically on Kevin's marketing plan to acknowledge wildfire season and ways to mitigate some of the disasters we've encountered. And it has become a major priority in my region to mitigate those wildfires. They're heavily impactful on tourism and on people's lives, and I appreciate that effort. And then, as an odd aside, I was impressed to see Oregon license plates now include a Smokey the Bear plate, which I happily put on the truck. And proceeds from that go to wildfire mitigation and education. And today, education's as important, and policy change, frankly, on the power side is important for our area. And then secondly, you know, I'm a bit of a TripAdvisor snob, and not as a specific site, but as a gauge for us, a quantifiable gauge on how we're doing with guest services. This year, unfortunately, we did not win an award. That we've won 6 of the last 8 years we've won an award. But I do want to recognize the hotels in Oregon. Again, 10% of the awards handed out were handed out to Oregon hotels. That included Oxford Hotel in Bend and the Atticus in McMinnville. And every hotel in Oregon does an exceptional job representing Oregon to guests that are coming, as we've heard, internationally soon. And we do a great job, and a disproportionately positive job for the guests coming to Oregon. So congratulations to those 2 companies, and I'll be back. 5 Pine will be back. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Willits, for the inspiration and for sharing the message of what Oregon means within the national frame. There are a lot of remarkable lodging operators and places to stay in Oregon. So thank you for calling attention to that. Commissioners, anyone else? Well, in closing, we need to acknowledge that technically both Commissioner Sugahara and Vice Chair Francisco's term on the Oregon Tourism Commission end June 30th this year, meaning today's meeting could be their last meeting. We've been informed by the governor's office that the next possible executive appointment, when new members could be appointed to the commission, is this fall, likely in September or October. And given that our next commission meeting is scheduled for October 5th in Salem, if no one has been appointed to those positions prior to that date, then commissioners, you serve until there is a replacement for you. So we've lost a year of meeting together. I'm not ready for you both to leave us at this time, and hope that even if your replacements are named ahead of October 5th, that you'll still join us and be at that meeting and consider it your last meeting as members of this commission. If no one has anything else, I'll let you have the balance of your day to go and congratulate these two, and looking forward to being in person again this October 5th in Salem. This meeting of the Oregon Tourism Commission is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.